Generally, you said feminism is neutral.
Here's what actually happened.
This goes at the foundation of all knowledge.
Money. I'm really mad that
What difference does it make, right? What
Stop.
the deregulation of the industry is obviously going to cause more of that industry.
And to lubricate the trust connection between people until they have enough.
Yet we could still look at biological reality in determining who's a female, even if there are.
Why don't you denounce feminism the same way you're denouncing capitalism? If you don't...
For something to be objective, it needs to be verifiable. And you can't verify...
If I make a claim as a political pundit, it is true that I definitely could be wrong. You're promoting, right?
Ideology is the main tenet of politics, right? This is my ideology. So 2015, anyone go back and watch the footage? The first GOP debate.
Cool, Robert. Oh, that? With a crowbar, you say?
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I am Sara, the Raging Tomato, here bringing to you another live debate between the one and only John Filax. And of course, you know him. He's been here before, Connor from Counterpoints. The statement of the evening is police are trained to violate the Constitution. John, if you'd like to begin with your opening statement, please.
Hi, Sara. Thanks for having me. Connor, hi. Nice to meet you, sir. So I'm a 20-year plus police and government accountability activist and lifelong constitutionalist. And I've been studying the police and government for many decades now. And anyone who gives it a good close look watches their behavior versus what is written down in the Constitution. The two things are antithetical to each other. Like, your right to privacy, for instance, just to keep it basic. You have a right to keep your person's papers, houses, and effects to be private unless you did something wrong. Well, almost the first thing every cop does when he encounters you is he gives you those brackets and he says, let me see some ID. The thing is they believe that that's just normal. That's routine. That has become de facto. When in fact, what that is, when a cop says to you, let me see some ID, and you haven't done anything wrong, what he's literally saying to you is, please surrender your right to privacy that you are guaranteed under the Fourth Amendment. Please surrender that to me because I asked you to do it. And if you don't do it, the overwhelming majority of cops from coast to coast, video after video, thousands of videos, they get angry, they push, they coerce, they lie, and then sometimes they even get violent. Just for the fact that you won't hand over your little plastic card, even when you're not supposed to. And that's just one example of many. I mean, I don't know how long I can go. I can go, 8 minutes of... I could just give example after example like that, for instance, or the fact that, somebody that knows the law or starts talking about constitutional rights, again, video after video, coast to coast, from department to department. Someone starts talking about their constitutional rights, cops get angry. They start calling them sovereign citizens. They immediately need backup. If they were trained to follow the Constitution, they'd be like, oh, we're good, man. Hey, call off those units. We're good. This guy knows his stuff. He's a constitutionalist just like we are. We swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. This guy gets it. we're good. We have a real American here. But instead, it's the exact opposite. Once someone starts talking about their rights and exercising their constitutional rights, it pisses the police off to no end. And if they're not trained to get upset by someone exercising their rights they swore to preserve, protect, and defend, if they're not trained to get upset, then why do they get upset? If they were trained to preserve and protect and defend the Constitution like they swore to do, they would be so happy when somebody said, no, thank you, I don't want to ID, or no, sir, I don't want you searching my car, or come back with a warrant. That would make a police officer proud if an American said, come back with a warrant. Instead, it's the exact opposite. And it's because they're trained to circumvent and get around people's constitutional rights, either through threat, duress, or coercion, one way or another. Fantasy football.
I muted myself. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And Connor, to you, please.
Yeah. So can you guys hear me okay, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So watching behavior versus what's written down. I mean, I could probably agree to that. So for instance, I was told in the academy during my training that Americans, well, the thing that makes our country great is the Constitution of the United States, and the fact that if you don't commit crimes, then law enforcement officers should not be able to stop you, detain you, question you, whatever. That was in my training. So that's kind of where, I would cite that as a counterexample to the thesis. However, I will admit that there are dickhead cops who are out there who push the boundaries. But the training, once again, is that we have consensual encounters, meaning that if you have not committed a crime and we just ask you for your ID and you tell us to go F ourselves, then we have to go F ourselves. As a matter of fact, you're saying that you can show video after video after video of cops getting pissed off because they're being told to F themselves during a consensual encounter. I would say that during consensual encounters, I was told to F off repeatedly. And I was like, okay, nice. Have a nice day. Thank you for talking to me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because we're on body camera now. You think that like cop behavior is bad now? It's probably 90% reduced now that we have body cameras, now that we have cell phone cameras, okay? Also, I'm going to push back a little bit. I'm going to say there's a textualist interpretation of the Constitution, whereas there's actually the legal limits, okay? Every right that's given in the Constitution is not an unlimited right, okay? It's a limited right. So, for instance, we could read the First Amendment and infer that you cannot be incarcerated for speech whatsoever. Like the Congress shall pass. We have the Supremacy Clause, which says that the Constitution is supreme law of the land. We also have a paper right there that says Congress shall make no laws in reference to abridging the freedom of speech. And yet we have laws like assault in the state of Florida, which basically says that if you threaten someone and they're in reasonable fear of like imminent injury or death or battery or whatever, then that's a crime that you can be incarcerated with. Same thing with the Second Amendment. A textualist interpretation of the Second Amendment says that you can have an aircraft carrier or a nuclear bomb. That's not the case in our country. And there's case law from conservative justices like Antonin Scalia that say other than what textualist interpreters of the Constitution do. Please surrender your right to privacy. Okay, when it comes to that stuff, oftentimes when you see cops getting pissed off, it's in reference to a traffic stop or it's in reference to a criminal detention. Okay. And I've had this before where if I've had to litigate it on the side of the road and there was a teenager telling another teenager, you don't have to identify yourself. And I was like, no, you do need to identify yourself because I have the exact description of the suspect and you fit the exact description. And the guy was like, what was the description? And then I repeat it word for word to him. And he's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Here's my ID. But realistically, if his teenager was giving his teenage friend bad advice and they got hyped up with each other that they didn't need to give me the ID, I would be forced to detain them, forced to call backup, forced to arrest them for resisting arrest without violence. All right. And then sovereign citizen versus backup. I would say that if we take a look at it again, I'm sure there's abuse of power. I'm sure there's dirtbag cops. I'm sure there's cops who, for instance, whenever you're filming a public building and you walk up and ask them to identify yourself and the cops are actually out of bounds because filming a public location is not, a crime. I'm sure there's plenty of cops like that. But also, I'm telling you that the amount of people who think that they're not being detained versus the people who actually are detained, they just don't know it yet, is like very divergent. And we'll talk about that during this during this conversation. Also, in reference to vehicles, okay, we have at least several doctrines that are going to judge us. Bear in mind, I was in the police academy 10 years ago. I haven't done law enforcement for 6 years. So if I get something wrong, my apologies. But plain view, if I see you have an alcohol container and there are alcohol ordinances or there are drunk driving laws, I can detain you. Okay. If I see your alcohol, if I see your marijuana, if I see your pipe, okay. Mobile conveyance. They've argued that this is a private property, so therefore you shouldn't be able to do anything. Case law after case law after case law after case law has held that a conveyance is a hybrid space. It's simultaneously private and public. So even though it's your private property, you are conducting it in public, and therefore, if you do crimes or traffic infractions, you can be detained. Finally, there's probable cause, which basically states that if I probably think that you committed a crime and I have sufficient evidence to believe that you committed a crime, then I can detain you and probably arrest you and incarcerate you. But that's a lot, so we'll take it from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Connor. And as a kind reminder to the audience, we are going to get through our debate. We will move into closing statements. We will read and respond to your kind super chats. And then, of course, we will open up the panel. So if you have questions or comments to add into this conversation, we will offer you the space to do so. Gentlemen, I leave the floor open to you.
Go for it, John.
Okay. So thousands and thousands of videos, day after day after day, billions and billions and billions of views of the cops violating the Constitution, all repeating the same things from coast to coast. Where are they getting this from?
You're going to have to go into the specifics, because oftentimes I'm almost guaranteeing you it's
the license thing when someone's not detained. Because I brought up the fact that they try to threaten duress and coercion to get a license from you, and the majority of cops get angry when you won't give it to them. And I'm talking about consensual encounters. They just walk up to you and like, there's one thing. How come they do that from coast to coast when, in fact, almost every state you have to have RAS and PC to get a license from someone?
Okay. Well, hold on. So we kind of need to break this down. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're talking consensual encounter, typically any traffic stop is going to have an inciting violation. And there's so many violations.
Forget traffic stop.
Okay. So you're just talking about somebody's
standing on the sidewalk and someone calls the police on me because they don't like whatever. Cop has to respond because in this day and age, they have to respond for every reason, it seems like. So they respond. He walks up to me. Boom. He does this number. I say, no, thank you. And now we start this circus.
Well,
thousands and thousands and thousands of videos across YouTube where the cop starts getting mad, starts lying. He starts saying, you have to give it to me. If he'll say, am I being detained? You're not free to go. They'll never answer a direct question. Like, you don't know all these techniques and tactics that police do?
No, I'm sure I do.
Okay.
But I also think that there's something that we need to talk about, which oftentimes is context. So for instance, like, let's say there was actually a case, I think it was out of California. There was a gentleman who was sitting on a park bench enjoying the sunset or whatever, and he was detained. And then the cop basically forced the issue. And he was like, I'm in a public park. I'm sitting on a bench. I'm not doing drugs. I'm not drinking. I'm enjoying a public space. Why are you detaining me? And the cop was like, you have to give me your ID. And then eventually they beef. And then eventually the guy gets arrested. Well, what ends up happening is, because we have body cameras now, the city ended up having to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars because there was no reasonable, articulable crime that was there. However, typically, when it comes to law enforcement officers, there are, I guess, what you would call like quality of life crimes. So, for instance, trespassing, loitering, and prowling is kind of a vague one. Resisting without violence is a vague one that typically gets dropped by the state attorney, but it's, when in doubt, resisting without, right? So the whole point.
My only arrest in my life was for that garbage, but go on.
I'm sure you might not have been guilty of an underlying crime, but you might have been guilty of contempt of cop, right?
I was protesting an unconstitutional Fourth Amendment violating DUI checkpoint. Absolutely. They didn't like it.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So, but I'm sure they hit you with the when in doubt, resisting without. They hit you with resisting without violence, and then it was probably dropped by the state attorney, right?
No, it wasn't dropped. Not even close.
Oh, okay. Well, we could talk about the circumstances of your protest, arrest, and incarceration if you want. But
no, you said it right. They use catch-all terms for when they don't have anything solid or constitutional or want to do actual police work. They do catch-all charges like disorderly and like resisting without violence. You're proving my point for me, but go on.
Well, no, but I mean, these things are things that have survived case law. And as I was saying earlier, there's textualist interpretations, which is effectively you just read the text of the Constitution and you think, oh, we're done now. Like we don't have to analyze anything else. But clearly the way that the Constitution has been interpreted for the past 250 years is we read the Federalist Papers. We read contemporaneous articles written by the people who were crafting the laws.
So
we read other judges who have judged things in the past 250 years.
Which Constitution do the police read? Which version?
I mean, I read the normal one.
How come I'm reading a different? The one I read is completely opposite to what I see them doing in video after video after video after video.
So let's hit one that I think is obvious, okay? Because I believe this for a really long time. The Second Amendment, right? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, okay? A textualist interpretation of the Second Amendment that is argued by libertarians all the time is that the clause is separate. So a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, okay? That's one clause. Second clause is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, all right? So the way that textualists have interpreted that is saying that any restriction on any concept of like firearms and capacity to bear and all that kind of stuff is an infringement upon the Second Amendment itself and therefore is invalid. Okay, that's a textualist interpretation of the Constitution of the United States. That's not the way that law has gone for the past 250 years. What's happened is they've made ordinances, they've made laws, city, county, state, saying that you can only bear weapons in reference to this context, or you can only bear these kinds of weapons.
Those are called infringements.
Okay, but you know what's funny is one of the most conservative justices in American history, Justice Antonin Scalia, said that there's no unlimited rights in the Constitution. Reasonableness is another metric.
Nothing unlimited, but when you're talking about a free country, you're always supposed to go towards freedom in the citizen, not the government, not the police officer, not the judge, and not the politician, who all have case law immunity from the actual sovereigns, the people.
I don't think I think you've got it inverted, buddy. I think every society since the inception of the concept of,
do I have qualified immunity as a citizen, or do police have qualified immunity?
Police have qualified immunity.
So which one of us would be sovereign from the law then?
I don't know how you're using sovereign.
Sovereign is all of us have to do this. The sovereign is above the rest of us. So if I have to follow the laws and the police don't have to follow those same laws, that would make them the sovereign and me below them, because I have to follow the laws and they're sovereign from the laws.
I think I'm saying that.
So you're saying cops are sovereign citizens, judges are sovereign citizens.
No,
because they have immunity. Sure judges have sovereign immunity and police have qualified immunity.
Can you
thus they're sovereign from the laws the rest of us have to follow.
Yeah. So sovereign, a supreme ruler, especially a monarch. Okay. So hold on.
Especially.
Okay. So hold on. So sovereign, a ruler. Okay. English common law arguably roots all the way back into Roman Republican law and Roman imperial law. Okay. And what it says typically is that in a dispute amongst citizens, you do have to defer to the state as like a neutral third party. Now, the sovereign gets, or the king gets, or the Caesar or the emperor or whatever, he gets a higher station within society because he's invested with the power and responsibilities of maintaining civilization.
So he has sovereign immunity.
But we do that in democratic societies as well, of course. Like, you don't have the rights or abilities. Like, you can defend yourself, but you don't have arrest powers. Arrest powers are deferred to the courts and law enforcement officers.
Wait, citizens don't have arrest powers?
I'm sure that you have citizens' detention powers or arrest powers, but I'm also sure that they're extremely limited in scope.
Okay, what's that mean? In America, that means that a law enforcement officer has more sovereignty. Right there. We, the people, are the sovereigns in this country. We, the people. Not the cop who has qualified immunity, not the judge who has sovereign immunity, not the politician who has career criminal immunity for their whole life, plus security. The sovereigns are on the government. The sovereign citizens are on the government side of the fence, Yet they have the nerve to call somebody like me a constitutionalist, a sovereign citizen. Like everything's backwards in government parasite land.
Well, okay, but what you're saying is this is not how it is, but then you're immediately saying that this is how society is operating. So which is it? Because you're saying that the Constitution is granting you broad authority in order to not have to defer to the state. But then the state is saying, no, you don't. And then you also just said that judges have sovereign immunity, that cops have qualified immunity.
I never said the Constitution grants authority. The Constitution is supposed to restrict the ultimate authority that judges and cops and politicians have now. And it's not
the
working.
Constitution puts limits on authority. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Now that we've cleared up that little issue.
Yeah.
Okay. You understand that the entirety of the past 250 years of the United States says the opposite of what you're saying, right? And then also you're going with a textualist interpretation.
I keep hearing you say that, but okay. What am I getting wrong? Did I get something wrong?
No, I would say that what you're getting wrong is you need to read Federalist 29 and Federalist 46.
Enlighten me, please.
Okay, so if you look at I like using the Second Amendment because it's pretty clear, especially from a textualist perspective. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay. If you read Federalist 29 and Federalist 46, it's pretty clear that the founding fathers and whoever wrote 29 and 46, which I think are the only ones that actually address the Second Amendment or private arms or whatever, they're actually arguing not about people's right to keep and bear arms. They're arguing about whether or not they should even have a standing army. They're saying that the militia is the replacement for the standing army. And so as a result, states should have a limited coterie, a limited cadre of officers that they can appoint and that they can train and this, that, the other. But realistically, who is going to secure the United States of America is a militia, meaning armed private citizens who are called into service during times of insurrection and during times of war. Okay. Now, within that conversation, though, they're not, they're stating that private citizens have the right to keep and bear armies, the right to keep and bear arms, but they're contextualizing it almost exclusively within volunteer military service. And so as a result, our orientation, self-defense, is something that has emanated from American culture as a whole. It has not emanated from a contextualized understanding of the Second Amendment of the United States.
Okay, I don't know what you're trying to get to with all that.
I'm trying to get to, if you read just the Constitution, then you're not reading enough. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so you're saying I only read the Constitution?
I'm saying that if you haven't read the case law that is developed from the Bill of Rights, then yeah, you probably are you are guilty of reading too narrowly.
Okay. You've heard of the IRS, right?
Of course.
Okay, so you believe you have to pay tax on your labor, right?
Correct.
Okay. I read all of Title 26, Internal Revenue Code. That law does not exist. Does not exist. An American living and working in the United States of America is not required to pay an income tax. The government will come and take your property, SWAT team your house, empty all your bank accounts, close all your businesses down, and completely destroy your life.
Yeah, so aren't you just
wrong?
Pay
that income, hold on. If you don't pay that income tax, that doesn't even exist.
Okay, so if you're saying this law doesn't exist, and yet we have a constitution stating that government is of, for, and by the people, and then we have these institutions and these organs of government that are working and enforcing their will upon you, and then the broader society is not rebelling against their alleged tyranny, aren't you just a member of a democratic society?
You're defending.
Aren't you just a member of a Republican society?
Me?
Yes.
No, I'm a member of whatever the hell you call this, some fascist, socialist, garbage country we've become. This hasn't been a constitutional republic in a long time.
When do you think it was?
Probably the closest, probably in the 1800s, maybe early 1900s.
But
after 1913, we're done, cooked. Once there's a central bank, Once there's a central bank, it's over. Once you have a standing army, like in Minnesota right now, there's a standing army. And to me, the amount of police we have in this country is a standing army, where you risk getting your freedom impeded. To me, if a government employee impedes my freedom for 30 seconds, to me, it's the end of the world. You better have the biggest, baddest, most urgent reason to impede an American's freedom. That's how important it is to me. And people act like it's no big deal to get pulled over on the way to the grocery store.
Yeah.
It is a big deal. Freedom is a big deal. And when everyone's laissez-faire and all flippant about it, and all the cops are great, meanwhile, they're murdering people left and right. 3-4 people a day, the cops are unaliving. We are not a free country. This is all a facade. It's garbage. And I'm on the side of peace and nonviolence and a constitutional republic. And you're on which side?
Yeah, I'm on the side of the actual republic as it functions, not as you kind of like
the way
wish
it functions
it
now
was.
as the fascist garbage.
What do you think
now.
Fascism is?
Fascism is corporatism, as the biggest fascist in the world, Mussolini, said. If you want to call it what it really is, it's corporatism, and that's exactly what we have in this country.
Hey, okay, and what did he mean by corporatism? Did he just mean corporations ran society?
Yeah, corporations. All the big heads of corporations are intertwined with government.
Okay, no, that's not what he means by corporatism. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Corporatism is treating the nation state like a body, like a vital organ. Okay, so the economy is the heart, and the military is the skin, and the white blood cells are the cops, and the state is the brain, and all that kind of stuff. That's corporatism. And then fascists are flexibly authoritarian, which effectively means that they will do whatever it takes in order to get, seize, and maintain power. Okay, that is fascism, is political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism. So once again, I would say, like, you're reading, which is great, and I love that you're reading, but you're not reading enough, because believing that this is fascist, you could say it's like authoritarian within like certain realms or whatever. But if you compare it to the authoritarian fascist regimes of Nazi Germany, Franco Spain, Italy, or even like Pinochet Chile, like we are nowhere fucking near those societies.
Why is that?
Because the dictator can't just walk in and say, hey, fuck you, I want your property, I'm going to kill you and take your shit.
Yes, well, they don't do that here with the IRS?
Do you think there's a difference between you? Like, I don't, okay, we'll avoid personal stuff. In Nazi Germany, they dispossessed entire classes of people and say that we do not believe that this is a part of our nation. These are not a part of our people. These are foreign entities. And so as a result,
like the Indian
can detain them, we can ghettoize them, we can liquidate them, and we can seize all of their property. And that's what happened.
Isn't that how America was started?
Yes, started, but the Native Americans were not a part of our national body because they didn't recognize the sovereignty of the Republic of the United States. Do you have an equivalent since like 1776, besides Native Americans, where we identified a segment of our society that was not a part of our society, violated their rights, liquidated them, and then seized all their property?
So what? Tell me
the closest thing you're going to have is slavery, and we kind of fought a big war about that one.
So you think so America going all over the world, 190 countries, military bases everywhere. We're not a fascist.
No, we're like a liberal commercial empire.
Okay, you're just putting different labels on it, honestly, at this point.
No, I'm not. I actually gave you a very specific definition of fascism, and I'm telling you something else. So, do you know what liberal means?
I know there's different variations of liberal. Your Thomas Jefferson liberal versus today's liberals.
You emphasize liberty from government and freedom in general as a universal human good, right? Like maximal human freedom. That's liberalism, ideally.
I want to know how cops violate the Constitution, man.
We can go back to it.
I get you're a smart guy and you want to go.
My argument is that you're reading, but you're not reading enough.
I hear you. Let's just stick to basic freedom.
Okay, sure. Which one?
Okay. How often should somebody's freedom be impeding as a free American?
As minimally as possible.
So here's what I always tell everybody as a meter. If there's no victim, there's no damages, there's no trespassing, and there's no endangerment of the public, You should be a free person to live as an American, as a free person.
I agree with that.
Okay.
But guess what?
What?
Endangerment of the public is where you're going to bump into libertarians arguing about risky behavior. So, for instance, if you do 20 miles an hour over the speed limit or whatever, have you really hurt anybody? No. It's like a relatively victimless crime. But are you engaged in risky behavior that could end up hurting somebody? Absolutely. And so the state takes the ability to regulate that.
So if somebody wants to do heroin, you're fine with that?
No, I'm not. I'm not a liberal.
Wait. Who's the victim?
The individual.
They're victimizing themselves?
Yes.
Oh, so you don't believe in my concept. My concept is if there's no victim, okay? About prostitution.
Yeah, same thing.
There's a victim in prostitution?
Well, I mean, I make a joke about it, but realistically, like, I want to turn Miami into like a sexually depraved like mecca for all the liberals and libertarians to go do whatever the fuck they want. But yeah, I think in the rest of the country, they should, prostitution should be banned.
Why?
Because it's bad for society. It's bad for individuals.
So you're not a constitutionalist?
No, I think I am. I 100% think I am. I don't think that the Constitution says that you need to tolerate endless amounts of crime just because you feel like it. I think that's very silly. Yeah.
Okay, so you don't believe there needs to be a victim then? You believe in victimless crimes? I can't.
Yeah, there are
someone can be a cop or
victimless crimes, but I would say that there are victims in said crimes.
There's victims and victimless crimes.
Yes, because for instance, if you're trafficking tons of heroin into the United States for sale and consumption by Americans, you might be able to produce heroin in Afghanistan, traffic it through Europe, have it get to the United States, and then have somebody use heroin, and you might not kill anyone along that supply chain. Okay, let's say you have the world's most ethical heroin supply route. Okay, and yet what's happening when that person is consuming their heroin is that it correlates with total depravity, total economic depravity, total social depravity, their lives imploding, families getting destroyed, abandoned children, neglected family members, burnt cash reserves, all that kind of stuff. And so there's all these deleterious effects to drug addicts that I don't just want to go, oh, well, they're not hurting anybody else, rubber stamp.
So, okay,
that's why a lot of people call me a liberal, because I believe in maximal human freedom, but there's limits to the freedom that I want to let people have. Because I'm not insane.
My man,
you're contradicting
yourself a lot, man.
I do just want to kind of jump in just to let us know we are kind of like veering. It is still in the topic, but it's a very side note of it. So I didn't know if you wanted to try to bring it back to the police and actually violating the Constitution.
Well, once again, I think the thrust of my argument is that, like, you just don't believe the case law of the past 250 years, including stuff that's gone up in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. You just don't think it's valid. You think people wrote down words on the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and boom, that's it. That's all we have to go off of. Which is not true.
I just told you there's no law that says you got to pay income tax, and they put people in jail over it. So even if there
if I Google right now,
hold on. Even if there isn't a law, they will SWAT team your home and ruin your life.
Okay, so if I Google right now, when did Congress pass the income tax? I'm not going to find a specific piece of legislation that was passed probably in the late 19th, early 20th century.
They'll say the 16th Amendment, but just like you said, you have to read, you have to get into it. That's what started me in activism to begin with.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
Why don't you just call your accountant and say which law requires an American living and working within the United States to pay an income tax? Not one of them can produce it. Not one.
Okay, why don't I just pull up the 16th Amendment to the United States?
Go ahead. The 16th Amendment says they can lay tax on any source derived, but that there's been Supreme Court decisions. You like the Supreme Court, right? That said that the 16th Amendment has given no new power of taxation. So whatever was before the 16th Amendment was after the 16th Amendment. And I'm an expert on this subject, so you're really going to waste your time if you think you're going to take a 5-minute Google search and...
No, I'll just read it out loud. Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment amongst the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration.
Mm-hmm.
So is that not just Congress has the right to tax?
So there's constitutional taxes and there's unconstitutional taxes. So direct unapportioned taxes are unconstitutional, and indirect apportioned taxes, like sales tax, like a tax where it's not mandatory through the barrel of a gun. That's the whole purpose of a constitutional republic. The taxes that the government brings in are constitutional. They're indirect. They're voluntary. It even says voluntary in Title 26. It's all based on voluntary compliance. And then the government takes that budget and they budget their country. But you can't do that. You can't go and fight all these wars and have 1 million police officers in a police state and all this weaponry and control the whole world and become this empire with just indirect constitutional taxes. That's why they have direct unapportioned taxes, and it's through the barrel of a gun, because there's no law that says you have to do that.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I mean, I hate to go for
you're going to go to section 61. You're going to go to section 61, and then you're going to end up in Title 26, section 861, T-through T-14, and it lists who's liable to pay a tax on their labor who lives and works in the United States.
Hold on. So the way that I'm reading it, and I'm assuming the way that it's going to be interpreted. So Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states. And there's no clause or period there. So wouldn't it be saying that you can't tax the different states differently? Like a portion, like it seems like there's a subject.
Amendment, in order for a tax to be constitutional, it had to be indirect and apportioned. Well, they didn't like that, because then you had to work within a budget and you couldn't have a central bank and the IRS. So what? They
passed it the same year.
Passed what the same year?
They passed the 16th Amendment and they passed the federal income tax the same year. So you're saying
correct.
Like, well, they wrote it this way, but then they passed a law immediately afterwards saying the opposite of what the amendment said.
So the Federal Reserve Act, the IRS, the Federal Reserve Bank, and the income tax are all one big Ponzi scam that was created because they didn't want to work within a budget, a constitutional indirect tax budget. This way they could just print all the money they want with the fake Federal Reserve Bank. We've all know that the Federal Reserve is not a government bank, right?
Well, they didn't move to printing money until like the 1970s, so let's not get ahead of ourselves.
We took off the gold. We went off the gold standard in 71, but at the same time, this is all pre-planned.
Okay.
All right.
And do you want to go back to the gold? Do you want to go back to where states, because before the Constitution was even written, each state had their own currency. Mm-hmm. But as a result of having their own currencies, they also had the problems of their own currencies, where fiscal policy and governmental policy were not unified. And so as a result, there were booms and crashes amongst the states that then had people like living and dying off of various currencies within the United States until we got rid of that nonsense. Weirdly enough, Bitcoin and all those like random speculative currencies are actually like a revival of the dynamics of the 19th century. And then also like Andrew Jackson attacked like the Federal Reserve Bank because I think it existed and then he destroyed it and then it came back again. But the whole reason why we have a central bank is to like manage monetary policy for the past like 200 years or 150 years. And it's way better than the 19th century booms and busts of random currencies.
That's not why we have a Federal Reserve Bank. That's not why we have a Federal Reserve Bank. And the Federal Reserve Bank is not a government bank. It's a privately owned bank.
I don't give a shit. If it's a central bank that still helps the United States government manage the flow of like Keynesian,
you don't give a shit if
gold standard economics. I don't give a fuck.
If private-owned families control your country's monetary policy, you don't give a fuck?
No, I don't give a fuck, because let me ask you a question, okay? So here's the thing with the gold standard, all right? We have the value of $1. Hold on. Track me with this, okay? I want you to listen to this. So
good stuff.
Okay, so we have the gold standard through 71, right? And realistically, I think that you probably think that any currency the United States does have should be proportional to something that of actual tangible value. Am I presuming correctly?
You mean coin, like the Constitution says?
Sure.
Okay. Specie money, yeah.
Okay. So at the same time, let's go ahead and talk about value real quick. So how much is a sandwich worth to you right now?
Well, I'm not that hungry, so not that much.
Okay, so $5, $2, $10, whatever. Okay. Now say it's the apocalypse and it's been like 30 days since you've eaten. How much is that sandwich worth?
Your life.
Right. And so the whole point of fiat currency is saying that a F-35 jet, an F-22 Raptor, the military industrial complex, TV screens, monitors, microchips, all of these things are and foodstuffs are more tangible and more real than a randomly, arbitrarily selected, valuable mineral. So like gold, like gold is valuable because it has like utility, but we've also chosen it as a symbol of money. But realistically, like in an apocalyptic scenario, do you want a bar of gold or do you want a sandwich?
A bar of gold.
Well, not if somebody can walk up, not if you don't have a gun, right? Because if you have a gun, a sandwich, well, if you don't have a gun and you have a bar of gold and you have a sandwich, then a motherfucker with a gun can take both. Right?
You mean I got 30 seconds to live and I got to pick between a sandwich, a gun, and a gold bar? I mean, you can set up the situation to make it whatever you want. But if I got...
But that's not even the point of what I'm saying. The point of what I'm saying is that, like, value is relatively arbitrary, and the things that we select to back our currency are still real, tangible things, even when we're printing money.
Like what?
Like dams, infrastructure, road, cars, fighter jets,
you can't put all of that shit. But you can't put those in your pocket. You need.
I mean, depending on what it is, I probably could. I mean, I got microchips that I put in my pocket right now.
You're gonna go chisel a little piece of dam and put a little concrete in your pocket?
No, but some poor African overseas is, and as a result, I'm gonna have a modern technological innovation that's miraculous in my pocket. The amount of like a human wealth that has been unleashed in the past 150 years because of these fiscal choices is insane. The commercial empire, you act like the commercial empire, the American liberal fascist.
Aren't we 40 trillion in debt?
And don't we make $30 trillion a year?
You don't care that a private family runs America's fiscal policy, and you don't care that we're 40 trillion in debt.
As long as it correlates with real economic. Okay, do you have you ever had a mortgage?
Yes.
Okay, do you have a mortgage right now?
Yeah.
Does it bug you that you're $100,000 to $150,000 in debt?
Does it what?
Does it bother you that you're in debt in order to own a house?
Yeah.
Okay, but what are you doing about it?
What do you mean?
Paying it off.
You're being economically productive in order to make sure that your debt is serviced, right?
I do the best I can.
Okay, that's the United States, man. That's what we're doing. We're servicing our debt through economic productivity.
Current United States, less than 100 years ago, one man could have his family at home, his kids in a decent school, his wife raising the kids, making an hourly rate, and being able to buy a house and raise his kids and pay off his house and hand it down.
How long ago was that?
Less than 100 years.
Less than 100 years for sure. But it was the post-war period, because 100 years ago, back when we had policies that were more similar to what you want.
Bro, you're not a debater. You're a philosopher.
This is entirely on point. Back when we had the fiscal policies that you wanted, that in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, people didn't have pots to piss in because they had such an undignified economic life. The dignified economic life that your parents likely had, or maybe you enjoyed yourself, I'm assuming you're Gen X, but the point is that, like, the baby boomers, they only enjoyed like material success on such a broad scale. Number one, because redistributive economic policy like taxation, but number two, because of the collapse of the industrial world, in the United States being the last place that still had industry. So no, that entire, like, the 1950s, 1960s economic golden age was not birthed by laissez-faire 19th century style capitalism. It's a mirage. It's bullshit.
What were we talking about?
Well, we were talking about how libertarianism is a great principle, but kind of R-slurred in actual application. That's what I was talking about.
Private families own the bank. It's good. 38 trillion in debt. It's good. And the reason families,
if they do a good job, yeah, I don't give a fuck.
And the reason 38 trillion in debt is a good job. And the reason families in the 50s could afford a house was because
of the post-war collapse of the industrial world, except for America. And also, do you want to take a look at taxation during World War II? Do you want to take a look at the tax rates during World War II, the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s? The very era that you're talking about as unparalleled.
You mean
economic growth
income taxes?
The progressive income tax was insane.
You mean unconstitutional
it was like
tax?
After you reach like a few $1 million, it was like 90% or something.
So can we have another one of them post-serial, what'd you call it?
Post-war industrial collapses of the world, except for the United States.
But we've been at war constantly. When's our post-war one person can afford a house dilemma going to start for us?
Well, I mean, arguably that's more of a, well, actually, hold on. It's going to happen if we didn't take mass immigration and we only had United States citizens, it would be about in 30 to 50 years where we have a baby collapse because we only have about like 1.55 babies per family. And so as a result, what's going to happen is the baby boomers are going to die out, the millennials are going to die out, and then the Zoomers are going to drive around in relatively empty cities because there's going to be so few fucking people. So then you'll probably be able to buy 5 houses 50 years from now.
Right on, man.
So you just got to survive 50 years and then boom, you can buy as many fucking houses as you want.
We got this, bro.
Well, I mean, I planned on importing a bunch of Hispanics who love to have kids and don't like condoms. That was my plan. That way they can pay taxes to keep the whole, house of cards moving.
Just don't do it in Minnesota.
Well, right. I mean, that's why I think Trump's wrong. It's because he's not letting the Hispanics who love to have babies in. I think he's wrong. I think it's a bad policy.
What do you think of that Minnesota thing, man?
I think that it's going to be so here's the thing. So for those of you who don't know, we're talking about a cop shooting. There was Renee Good earlier in the week. There was a cop shooting within the past 24 to 48 hours. Basically an ICE officer. Well, hold on. I should back up a little bit. I'm going to narrativize it for people who haven't seen it. ICE is conducting an operation. There's a woman yelling at them and a man's cell phone filming them doing their thing. ICE walks over, starts acting a fool, shoves the lady, and then the guy who's videotaping steps between ICE and the cops and kind of like puts his arm out where he's like holding on to the lady to make sure that she's not getting like beat up and yoked up, but he's also putting his arm out towards ICE. ICE pepper sprays him or whatever, and then like 6 agents dogpile him. And while they're dogpiling him, because it's basically a monkey trying to fuck a football, excuse my French, what happens is one officer runs over and yanks the pistol out of the guy's like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock holster or whatever, but he screams gun. And so simultaneously, an officer that was standing next to him thinks that he's being warned about a gun and shoots the guy in the back, even though the gun's already gone, and he kills that guy. That's the description of the events as far as I see it. It's going to be a bad shoot in that the threat was gone by the time the trigger is getting pulled. The reason why that cop is not going to be incarcerated, though, is because he's going to say, I was acting in good faith. I did not see the gun get pulled away. I heard another officer scream gun, and I presume that the suspect was pulling it, which is why I shot him. And that's why he's not going to get incarcerated. What's that?
Immunity. They also have immunity, police officers.
Well, I mean, sovereign immunity is for civil suits, not criminal statutes, but you're right that they're probably going to close ranks and they're not going to charge him with a crime because they're going to say that he was engaged in the lawful performance of his duties. And even though he did a homicide, he reasonably believed that there was imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. And therefore he pulled the trigger, not having the entirety of the information. But the death was effectively like it's like an accident. It's not the same thing as a murder.
Why were they jumping on top of him? Why do you think? Because what?
Because they were attempting to detain him because they were attempting to detain another lady and he put himself in there.
So when the cop came and shoved the other lady, that was his attempt to detain her?
Well, I don't know. But yeah, probably. If he's knocking her to the ground, then that way he can get on top of her and put her in handcuffs. Yeah, probably.
So generally speaking, you just give police the benefit of the doubt.
If they're acting within the rules and principles that I was trained on, then yeah.
But not the Constitution.
Well, you would have to tell me. So for instance, like where does the peaceably assemble portion of the First Amendment, because we're talking about the First Amendment and Second Amendment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the peaceably assemble portion of the First Amendment, that is true. And I have freedom of conscience and freedom of speech. I'm in my own domicile. I'm allowed to say, relatively speaking, 99% of what I want right now, except for the N-word. But as a result, like, cops, generally speaking, cannot fuck with me. But if I'm in a public place and I'm interfering with a law enforcement operation, even if I do it as a protest, even if I do it as civil disobedience, even if I'm doing it on purpose, I can still be detained and arrested, of course. So yeah, there's limits to your speech. Like I said, there's no unlimited right.
Did he do something that was illegal?
Who?
The guy whose life was taken.
I would say that, like, if you're told by cops, if you're snatched up by cops and you don't immediately go to the ground or whatever and surrender, then that can be construed as resisting without violence.
Okay, so comply or die is basically where you stand. Comply or die.
Or you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride.
Same thing.
That's what I say.
Comply or die. So
no, I say you can beat the rap, you can't beat the ride. So what I mean by that is that
I've been hearing that since the 80s, bro.
What's that?
I've been hearing that catchphrase since the 80s. I know.
Well, it's a great phrase because it keeps people from being killed. Your advice gets people killed.
What advice did I give?
Well, you said comply or die, and you said that derisively.
That's the government's policy.
Okay, but you're saying that derisively. You should comply, and you can beat the rap, but very often you cannot beat the ride.
Okay, so the founding fathers should have just complied.
No.
Why not?
They actually wrote an entire piece of paper about why they didn't comply.
Why didn't they?
Because they felt that they had a government that didn't represent them.
You're getting it now.
No, I'm not, because I still live in a Republican democracy. I still vote in elections. Just because you don't like your representatives doesn't mean that you aren't represented.
Who am I represented by? I'm a constitutionalist. Who represents
whatever district you live in? You have a congressman.
Thomas Massey represents me, and he's in Kentucky, and I live in Florida. So where's my representation?
Move to Kentucky if you want that representative. But at the same time, I'm assuming you participate in local.
I want a constitutionalist. Sheriff, congressman, judge, they all swear an oath to the Constitution, and every single one of them violates it happily on camera.
Your neighbors don't agree with your interpretation of the Constitution of the United States. So if you want a representative who perfectly represents your ideology, you probably need to move to Kentucky.
The founding fathers agree with me.
I'm a huge fan. I don't think so, but I'm a huge fan of Thomas Massey in reference to, like, forwarding the Epstein files. Not so much a fan of Thomas Massey believing in contrails and other stupid bullshit like that.
The founding fathers don't agree with me?
You would have to show me a specific topic that the founding fathers and I disagree on.
You think the founding fathers, what would you think the founding fathers would think of people carrying a plastic slave card around everywhere they went and having social security numbers?
As long as they didn't have to present it, as long as they weren't committing crimes, I don't think they give a fuck.
You think the founding fathers would say, yes, put a plastic slave card in all of our pockets, and as long as we do XYZ, we won't have to present it to you? You think the founding fathers started shooting?
You don't have to have your plastic slave card if you don't. Don't people endlessly bitch about how people are voting in elections without ID? So there's hundreds of thousands of Americans, maybe millions of Americans running around without their slave card. You want the slave card because you want to drive a car. And that's been deemed a privilege and not a right.
Deemed?
Yes.
By who?
By your peers, by your society.
Hold on. Let's just go one at a time.
Not my peers. Not my peers. The guys with the guns who stopped following the principles of freedom deemed my travel is now a privilege. That's who deemed it. The guy who's willing to take your life if you decide to resist their oppression against you. That's the difference.
Power has worked.
You've decided that you've deemed it in your own imagination. The fact is, Americans are supposed to be free people.
You pretty much are.
No, pretty much my ass. You can't even go to the store without your freedom being impeded. You can't cut a tree down in your backyard without paid permission. If your grass gets too tall, a guy with a gun will show up at your door. Which America? What state do you live in, bro?
I live in Florida. I live in Central Florida.
Dude, they've been living in Central Florida for the last 20-some years.
You guys are probably living right next door to each other.
Yeah, I'll throw a rock at him.
Walk down the street and say hi.
What city do you live in?
You don't have to say.
Pretty much Orlando.
So Lakeland. Okay, cool.
Okay.
My mom lives in Frostproof. I had restaurants in Frostproof. Grady Judd is the biggest piece of garbage in the world. Doesn't even put body cams on his guys. Still fighting Richard Nixon's drug war. Like the America you believe in is not a constitutional free republic. It's not. You're supporting something completely different.
I think you're a textualist. I don't think that you've read further than the actual text of the Constitution of the United States. And I think there's 250 years of laws that support what I'm saying.
It's written in plain English, and all you have to do is know right from wrong.
Well, right, because you're reading one thing and nothing else. So hold on. Let me back up real quick though, because this is why I'm no longer a libertarian. Okay.
I've never been one.
You talk like one.
I've heard that before, but Bill Maher says he's a libertarian and he's a gun-grabbing piece of shit who hates the Constitution. So I'm not one of those people.
Okay, so
what constitutionalist? Constitutionalist. Okay, plain as day.
Okay.
Very simple.
The reason why
the opposite of police.
I think you hold on. I'll tell you about libertarians, even if you don't consider yourself one. Okay. Libertarians oftentimes are individualist. Okay. They believe that we're just these like islands and we're born and then we're endowed with these rights by our creator and they're sovereign and inviolable. That has not happened in the history of the fucking planet. So while I love the Declaration of Independence, and I do find the words very pretty, and I do think we should organize our society around it, I don't find it to be literally true. Okay? Force, violence is what backs up societies.
That's correct.
And so as a result, what's happening is you're appealing to all these flowery words that I think you misunderstand from a piece of paper, but you're fucked. The reason why you've paid your income tax is because all the people who misunderstand differently than you will come arrest you if you don't.
Correct.
The reason why you've paid your property tax is because they'll arrest you if you don't. But that's the predicate for all societies.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the predicate for all societies.
Except a constitutional republic. That's the whole point.
That's not even true.
We're supposed
How do you maintain a constitutional republic if you don't have somebody who's enforcing the laws of said republic?
The laws are for the people, not the government. That's the whole point of this country and the experiment of America is that we're not like that. We're different than the countries that use the barrel of a gun to control everybody. That's the whole point of the American experiment. Like, you're proving my point for me. You're exactly right. The only reason we pay an income tax is because we're not organized like the founders were. And they have guys, just like in Minneapolis, that'll just come and storm your house. And unless you're willing to throw your whole life away, you're not going to get your constitutional republic back. It's gone.
This is where it's already silly. We had the Articles of Confederation for like a decade or two before we had the Bill of Rights. And then some of the bills were passed in the late 19th century and early 20th century.
What's that mean?
So the entire amendment process was like designed so that we could change the law as we went around. And what's funny is you keep saying that the 16th Amendment doesn't permit the kinds of taxes that we're currently under.
Correct.
And yet it was passed the same, the taxes that you're saying are illegal were passed the same year as the 16th Amendment. So how did the legislators get done passing the 16th Amendment? And then they were like, oh, but I'm going to write a law 10 seconds later that's unconstitutional based off of the amendment I just passed.
They write unconstitutional laws all the time. A motorcycle helmet law was unconstitutional and it stood on the books for decades. The open carry law in Florida was unconstitutional, but it was still on the books for decades. They pass unconstitutional laws like it's candy. It's like their favorite thing to do. What are you talking about?
Okay, so hold on. We're going back to the Second Amendment because we're talking about the open carry law, okay? So you're saying that your interpretation of the Second Amendment is that any restriction on firearms is actually an infringement upon your Second Amendment.
Any? I didn't say that, no.
Okay, well, hold on. So let me test your limiting principle, though. Okay, so I have a pistol and I want to conceal carry or whatever. Should I just be allowed to go into like a delivery room, like a baby delivery room, unchallenged?
Is it your baby?
No.
You shouldn't be able to do that with or without a gun.
Okay, what if it's a public place?
They're delivering a baby in what, a public
Yeah, what if
lobby?
it's a public hospital? Am I entitled to be? It's a public hospital. It's funded by taxes. Am I allowed to be in every part of the hospital? I mean, I'm paying for it.
Except the restricted areas, yeah.
Okay, so now I want to take my Second Amendment and I want to take the Second Amendment into the restricted areas. Why can't I carry a pistol into a restricted area? It's a public hospital. My taxes are paying for it. Why can't I take a gun into a nursery?
Let me answer you. You can't take any part of your body in there in the restricted area.
Why not? It's a public hospital. I'm paying for it.
Because
I'm a
there's
taxpayer.
restricted areas. You're paying for a public jail too, but it doesn't mean you get to go chill with the inmates inside the cell.
Okay, so in that case, is my right to keep and bear arms being infringed?
Not in the public areas, no.
Okay. So hold on. So I shouldn't be allowed in the areas where let's say that my mere presence, let's say we're talking about the NICU, right? So I could contaminate the NICU and I could hurt or kill people.
Why?
What's that?
Why would you be able to do that?
Well, the NICU is the natal intensive care unit. So okay. So what I'm saying is the reason why that's typically a restricted area is because I could hurt or kill people, right? That's why I can't be in there.
Okay.
So that's a limitation on my right?
No, it's not.
Why not? It's a public hospital. I'm paying for it. It's my taxes. Why can't I go in there?
Because I already told you there's restricted areas in public places.
Okay, why can't I go into the restricted areas? My taxes are paying for it. What's the underlying reason? Why can't I go into
because those areas are restricted because they need them restricted so they can operate properly. That's why they have areas for the public and areas that are for the employees. Just like any other business.
Not a reasonable infringement upon my rights?
Your right to do what?
Well, I mean, I would say peaceably assemble.
You can peaceably assemble in public.
Okay, but you're saying that the Second Amendment can't be violated, and effectively, like, you're allowed to own what you want, and you're allowed to, relatively speaking, be where you want as long as that place is public. What I'm trying to communicate to you, I'll stop being a smartass, I'll just say it, is the point is that there are public institutions that have restricted areas because we've used our reason, because we're effectively reasonable apes, in order to say that if we go someplace, then this bad consequence could happen. And so we're going to curb your ability to do this thing. That exists throughout the entirety of the Constitution of the United States. There's 250 years of case law that says, the right to peaceably assemble. Okay, you can peaceably assemble in front of a public building in a public square. And as a matter of fact, sometimes you have to get a permit so you're not disrupting other people. But you can't peaceably assemble on a highway because you're impeding upon the freedom of other people.
The reason you can't peaceably assemble on a highway is because it's not peaceful.
No, it is peaceful. You're just linking arms. You're hanging out. You're singing Kumbaya. You're smoking pot.
You're endangering the public. It's not peaceful.
Okay, well, I mean, it is peaceful. All the traffic is stopped. I'm smoking weed. I'm hanging out. I'm at the drum circle, bro. I'm just playing like 1970s rock and roll songs. We're so peaceful.
I thought you were more serious, man.
No, I am pretty fucking serious because I think once you start going down this road, you realize that the state is the vehicle through which we curb people's freedom, and we have to argue about where the limits of those freedoms are. And the sovereign citizen constitutionalist bullshit is too far. It's crazy.
Okay. You think the Bill of Rights is too much freedom? I mean, that's basically you're winning the debate for me. That's what I'm saying about you.
I'm not, because you're not acknowledging 250 years of case history. That's not my fault that you don't think laws exist unless they're outside of the Constitution of the United States. It's not my fault.
Which one?
I mean, which one do you want to talk about?
Pick one.
Do you want to talk about Terry versus Ohio? Do you want to talk about, like, what do you want to talk about?
Oh, okay. That's a good one. So Terry versus Ohio basically eviscerated the Fourth Amendment probable cause standard. So in order to amend the Bill of Rights, you need, 2/3 of the states to make an amendment to the Bill of Rights? Yeah. Well, the courts in Terry versus Ohio said, 2/3 of the state, Fourth Amendment. Some racist cop in Cleveland, where I'm from, was named John Terry, or Terry was the guy who he victimized because he was a black dude and he was walking back and forth in front of a jewelry store. So because one racist cop found a guy and he guessed right that he had a gun on him, the Fourth Amendment got eviscerated. That's not constitutional.
Wait, okay, so just to be clear, the society that you want to win in, okay, so you see a sketchy guy walking back and forth in front of a jewelry store. You stop him and detain him.
No, I wouldn't stop and detain him. For
and
what?
you pat him
Wait,
down
wait.
for your safety.
No,
you find a firearm and you find burglary
whoa.
tools. You want him to go commit the crime first.
Why am I detaining him? Why would I stop and detain him?
Because you see a dude wearing a hoodie in July. And he's pacing back and forth in front of a business that's been robbed repeatedly.
Okay. What crime is that?
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's possession of burglary tools was one of the things that they got him on. I'm also pretty sure it was like possession of a firearm. Like, we could take a look at whatever he was convicted of.
So you don't know the case. The case is a super racist cop.
It's been 11 years.
Excuse me?
It's been 11 years since the last time I actually read Terry versus Ohio.
Okay, it was some super racist cop from way back in the day who just decided to stop him illegally. And the court sided with the cop like they almost always do to this day, and it's even worse now. It said, no big deal. It's just some black guy walking back and forth on the sidewalk.
Hold on, but can you steel man why they said he was allowed to stop the guy?
Yeah, I can steel man that. Just like I could steel man somebody in the 60s would look at you and say, you look like a crazy kook bag, and why is that guy wearing a beard in the summertime?
Well, but if we
start going by societal norms instead of what is actually freedom and what isn't, we end up with, I'm a racist cop. I don't have any standards at all. The courts are on my side. I have qualified immunity. The judge has sovereign immunity. The citizen gets mushed like an old cigarette into the pavement, and then we're not a sovereign people anymore. And you got people like you defending that garbage.
Yes, because you haven't steel man the case. The whole point of the case was that I have no idea whether or not that cop was racist or not. He was right. And so what ended up happening
was... He was right about what?
He said, hold on, I'll explain it. Relax. So what he said is that he's been a law enforcement officer for XYZ ABC amount of years. Based off of his training and experience, he believed that he saw a burglar or a robber who was on the verge of committing a crime. He detained said person not knowing whether or not he actually had probable cause. He had like reasonable suspicion.
Yeah, no,
therefore,
that wasn't a thing.
Right. It established it, right?
So he had neither probable cause nor reasonable suspicion. He had nothing is what he had.
Wait. You think that seeing a dude in a jacket in July pacing back and forth in front of a store that gets robbed all the time is not reasonable suspicion?
Reasonable suspicion didn't even exist back then. So it's impossible.
Right. We're talking about
it's impossible.
That's established these concepts.
So it's impossible for him to have reasonable suspicion considering that legal standard didn't exist. So not only did he not have probable cause, he did not have reasonable suspicion. That means he had nothing but a racist hunch. That's all he had. Go on.
Hold on.
Go on.
I've already said it twice, so I'll say it again. These are some of the case laws that have established said concepts.
Bill of Rights with case law.
Okay, so hold on. Let's go ahead and pull up the
two-thirds of the states in order to amend the Constitution. Terry versus Ohio is one of the biggest black eyes to ever happen upon this country, and only cops and government people support that. No person in their right mind. You could take anybody who doesn't talk about politics at all and say, hey, this used to be the standard in America, this free country. Now it's this because this cop in Cleveland saw this black guy walking back and forth. So now the Fourth Amendment gets eviscerated. And now a cop thinks reasonable suspicion is anytime his little fucking dick gets hard and he sees a guy pulling into a driveway that he doesn't like. And then there's 8 million videos about it on YouTube. And then there's guys that come on YouTube and think they're going to debate their way out of that crap.
Okay.
No, bro. That's not how reality works.
I think it is, but I'm going to read the Fourth Amendment real quick. All right, I'm going to read the Fourth Amendment real quick. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. So is your interpretation of this? As a matter of fact, let's just ask. Let me ask this question instead of trying to bait it, okay? Somebody commits a crime in front of you, and you're a cop and you're vested with detention authority, okay? What should you do at that time if you're a law enforcement officer and you believe this person has committed a crime?
What type of crime?
Theft.
Which I guess you would arrest him for theft since there's a damages and a victim.
Okay. So, but if we're being autistic about the Fourth Amendment, okay, did I have to get a warrant for that arrest?
No, because you have probable cause.
Okay, but I have probable cause, but I need to detain him first, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what if I see somebody grab a candy bar and then stick it in their pocket, and then they start walking quickly towards the exit of the business?
I'm not going to disagree. I don't disagree with detaining somebody first. If that's your argument here, it's pointless.
Okay, but isn't that exactly what happened in Terry versus Ohio?
No. There was no reasonable suspicion standard during Terry versus Ohio. So in order for somebody to impede an American's freedom before Terry versus Ohio, they had to have probable cause of a crime is, or about to be committed, and it has to be supported with articulable facts.
Yeah.
That cop didn't have any of that. He had a guy walking back and forth in some clothing in front of a jewelry store on St. Clair Avenue in downtown Cleveland, 10 minutes from where I grew up. He didn't have the legal standard to impede his freedom. That's why it's such a big case.
So,
instead of the court siding with the Fourth Amendment and freedom to the American people, they sided with the government and the racist cop. And now we've had decades of unconstitutional case law, Terry v. Ohio.
Okay,
probable cause is the Fourth Amendment standard. Terry versus Ohio is garbage case law.
Okay, so I'm kind of understanding you. I just think we're going to disagree, so that's fine.
I know that.
But the so I think that based off of what you've just said, I'm gonna presume that you would mean the following. Okay, number one, if he was sincerely worried that a crime was about to happen, then he should just stick around. See if there's probable cause. See if that, a crime does occur. Okay. Or he should say, well, right now, I kind of suspect that a crime is going down, but I don't have time for this shit. And, I don't have probable cause right now. So I'm going to dip out. I'm going to leave. And then boom, at that point, he hasn't violated the Constitution of the United States. He either sticks around and he waits for the crime to occur or likely occur, or he dips out because, he doesn't have enough.
Yeah, that's the
world that you would like to live in.
Yeah, he should do police work and wait and see and watch and call him back up if he needs to, or say, "Hey, I think this guy. Just keep an eye on him, please, because he's acting funny. He's acting shifty." It's called. I used to call that police work.
Okay, but we do understand that reasonable suspicion. This is once again reasonable suspicion has been established. People can be detained under that authority. They do have to render identification.
Hold on, no.
And they can be patted down for weapons if the cop is able to articulate why he believes that person has a weapon. So, for instance, if somebody's in gym shorts and a tank top, and I can see the outlines of their body, then I typically can't pat them down. Whereas if somebody is in a hoodie and it's unseasonably warm, then I can say, hey, I'm based off of XYZ ABC scenario. I need to identify you. Therefore,
so you agree with Terry? So you agree with the unconstitutional case law?
I agree with Terry versus Ohio, 100%.
Okay. Most cops do. They also agree with Pennsylvania versus Mims. They also agree with license plates. They also agree with slave cards. You guys are statists. You love government. Everything you get comes from the government. You take it from the taxpayer. The taxpayer has to pay it under threat and duress. And you guys love it because because it gives you power and it gives you all these things that in your life that you got comes from that system. So you talking bad against it, even though it's obviously bad and anti-freedom and anti-constitution, goes against everything you've lived in your whole life.
But but we can compare this to times that have existed in American history. So for instance, the 1950s, 1960s were arguably some of the most statist times in the United States of America with the highest tax rates. And yet it's been reminisced as the golden age of America. And then when we look at the 1960s through the 1980s, that's probably where the most libertine attitudes were taken in the 60s and 70s in reference to drugs. But then, because of the fallout from all of the libertine excesses of drug consumption, we got the drug war. And then the drug war basically spiked violence in the United States between the 1980s and the 1990s. And now we're back into a more statist society, and violent crime has been cut by half. So you're like living in this like beautiful rainbow-filled paradise. I walked outside today, and America is still a very beautiful and very free place, but you're crying like it's the fucking apocalypse, and it's just not. This is the safest time it's been to be alive since like 1958.
America is the safest place.
Not on the planet. As a matter of fact, authoritarian societies are more safe than we are. But as far as in the United States, this is one of the
police
safest
unalive
times
over 3 Americans.
Ever.
The police unalive over 3 Americans a day.
We're a country of 330 million. Do you have just as much of a chance of being killed by a shark or a fucking falling coconut?
Actually, again, you got the propaganda down. You're actually 22 times more likely to be killed by a cop than anybody else on the planet, including any terrorist in the world. So
okay, and what about homicide? Because I already know that's not true.
What's not true?
What about these standard levels of American homicide?
What about the fact that over 400 women, children, and animals have been RAPED'd by police since 2014, including a 1-year-old baby? How about
how many?
Over 400. How about the fact that a cop
in a
on his entrance
of 330 million? You understand that's a quarter of a billion people, right?
And that's why cops RAPE 1-year-old babies, because there's 330 million people.
No, kill those cops. I don't give a shit about that. But I'm saying, like,
do you say the same thing about cops who violate the Bill of Rights?
Sorry, what's that?
Do you feel the same way about cops who violate people's freedom?
I don't think we agree on what a cop violating people's Bill of Rights is, like civil asset forfeiture or any of that crap. I don't think we agree on any of that crap.
You agree with civil asset forfeiture too?
Absolutely.
Oh my God, bro. Dude, you're like a hardcore leftist, bro. You're hardcore leftist. You agree with the government stopping Americans on the side of the road and stealing their money and their life savings.
If they got 20 G's and no good reason for having it, yeah, I don't give a shit. And not just that, civil asset forfeiture is not done that way 90% of the time.
How about this
civil asset forfeiture 90% of the time is taking the assets from people convicted of drug trafficking crimes and sex trafficking crimes, but they can't prove that said assets were necessarily done in a criminal fashion, and therefore they forfeit the assets because they know that there's a likely chance that it was produced as the nature of a crime.
You don't believe in innocent until proven guilty. You're saying a person has to prove to you, who the fuck are you, what they do with their money and why they have money in their possession. Dude, think about what you're saying right now. Think about what you're saying.
Do we have, if I could maybe ask a question, maybe that like prompts something else a little different. Because there is a difference between being on your own private property and going out into the public. When you go out into the public, you are subject to these types of things to a degree, right? Like I am subject to complying with the law, how it's deemed in terms of like I have to follow the speed limit. I obviously just can't go around hitting people, so on and so forth. Versus when I'm in my private home, like they actually need warrants and other reasons to be able to come into my door. Is there a stark difference in, John, your interpretation of police violating the Constitution publicly versus how they would violate it privately in that aspect?
I think the only reason that they don't violate it more on private property is because they're scared of getting shot.
I mean, that's probably true, but that's a good thing.
That should be that way everywhere.
I mean, they relatively are. That's why the guy in Minnesota
when the government
got
is scared of the people, you have freedom.
Shot.
When the government is scared of the people, you have freedom. When the people are scared of the government, like we have now,
of the public, they just killed that guy just for having a gun the other day.
I can't hear you when you talk.
Yeah, you're both going at the same time. If we could be mindful of that.
My apologies. You said that the when the government is scared of the people, that we have freedom.
That's right.
And when the people are afraid of the government, we have tyranny. What I would say is the only reason why that guy in Minnesota is dead is because the government was scared of the people. So you have what you want. You got it.
Dude, you really see things backwards. The government was so scared of the people, they came and shoved 2 women on the ground, and the guy who tried to protect the woman, they took his life.
Correct.
Because they were scared?
Yes. Fear and anger are very closely correlated.
If they were really scared of the people, they wouldn't step foot in Minneapolis.
You want that as a society? Do you believe in immigration and customs enforcement?
I want Americans to defend themselves against government. Yes. I don't want standing armies. I don't want standing armies in the street. I don't want a police state where everything's illegal. I don't want to have paid permission to do anything in this country and then pretend that we live in a free country. It's all garbage, bro. You don't care that it's a private bank. You don't care that we're 38 trillion in debt. You don't care if people's freedom get impeded. You don't care if their private property gets stolen on the side of the road. You're not an American, bro. You're not an American.
There's infinitely more of me than there are of you.
That's exactly right. Thank you again. Thank you again for proving my point. That's the whole problem. People think like you.
You fundamentally don't understand the amount of people who believe that you can only look at the text of the Constitution of the United States from which to derive. Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. You think Terry versus Ohio
was the narrative that you created on your police report. I never said anything like that. You created that narrative on your little police report, just like
you said Terry versus Ohio was unconstitutional.
Well, it obviously is. Probable cause. Did he have probable cause?
No, but you already said earlier in the conversation. You already said earlier in the conversation that if I was watching a shoplifter likely commit a crime, even before they had committed said crime, let's say that they're taking property, they're walking out of a store, then I can still detain them, even though,
not the same.
No,
you saw him commit a crime.
Hold on.
You're about to commit a crime.
Okay. So you're saying that if I see like a shifty person at a store wearing like a hoodie, and they have like pock marks on their face, and they're like jumping around and all that kind of bullshit, then I can't use that as a thread to yank on with which to continue to like evaluate whether or not they're likely to commit a crime in the next few minutes.
Bro, what you just did right there is the epitome of cop-splaining. No, you cannot impede somebody's freedom without probable cause and using the Fourth Amendment standard. What you just did is what every cop does is cop-splain. I can take it to pull the little thread.
Because most people don't like fucking meth heads in hoodies jumping around in their fucking businesses. Correct. Yeah, correct. Most people don't like meth heads with pockmarked faces walking around inside their fucking businesses. You're right.
Why don't you do
Well, but that is a store, though. They could reserve the right to take them out, and then if they could ask the cop to remove them, which then in turn they could.
Correct.
Common sense. Hello. No, you don't have the right to impede his freedom because he's sketchy and you don't like the way he looks. And you just admitted how every cop polices right there through their feelings and their profiling, and they could care less about the Bill of Rights or individual freedom. And you just said libertarianism, Constitution. You could care less how they amend it as long as it's in the favor of the police and the blood-sucking government.
So hold on. This is what's so fucking silly about this entire conversation. Okay, I'm going to use a personal anecdote. So there's the predominant Black community in the northeastern side of the city that I used to work in. Okay, and we get a call about downtown. So this is like a mile and a half away. Downtown, we had a white guy, hoodie, Jinko jeans, boots, whatever, who robbed somebody downtown, disappeared. They had a backpack. Okay.
Victim. Got it.
And so what happens is I'm in the predominant Black side of the community, right? And I see a white guy, Jinko jeans, but he doesn't have a backpack. He doesn't have a hoodie. And therefore, I don't think that he has like, it's probably the guy, I'm going to be real. But I don't have probable cause. So I do a consensual encounter because I'm like, this guy kind of looks like him, but I have no idea who he is. But white dude, wife beater, Jinko jeans, walking around at 11 p.m. at night. That's sketchy as fuck. And he's like, hey, man, like, this is a consensual encounter. And I'm like, this is a consensual encounter or whatever. And I'm like, you're not detained, but I would like to have your ID if you would let me get it. And I was perfectly chill because I couldn't detain him at the time. I didn't have enough. But what ended up happening was he provided me his information. I had that. That dude was dead within 3 hours. Okay. The reason why he was dead within 3 hours, and I used, well, I guess, reasonable suspicion, but I would have just called it a consensual encounter. But the reason why he was dead within 3 hours was because He was running around in the south side of town robbing people. He had just gotten out of jail or prison, probably within a month or two. And then he was walking around the northeastern side of town, and he basically bumped into somebody that didn't like him, and he got smoked within 3 hours of me meeting him. And so he should have been secure in his person's papers and effects. And realistically, if you would have asked me constitutionally, could he have told me to go fuck myself? Absolutely. And I would have abided by him telling me to fuck myself. But you presuming that cops can they just need to look the other way whenever there's something sketchy going on. And the only reason why they believe that things are sketchy is because they're fucking racist.
Never said that.
Bullshit and not in line with reality.
Again, I never said either one of those things.
You said Terry versus Ohio, that Terry was racist as fuck.
That specific scenario, yeah. That's a fact.
I'm sorry. I find a young black man walking around in a hoodie in July suspicious. I think that's suspicious as well.
Oh, yeah? And which part?
Yeah, wearing a hoodie in July is suspicious.
Is suspicion a felony or a misdemeanor?
It's none.
Is suspicion part of the Fourth Amendment?
No.
So it's not. It wasn't constitutional to stop Mr. Terry, now was it?
But can I? Okay, but where you went to probable cause?
Whoa! Right?
No, I'm not going to answer you directly because I'm going to say exactly. So what you said was, the belief.
Oh my God, bro! You're copsplaining, bro.
Well, hold on. Let Connor give his point.
He talked for 2 minutes. I asked 3 questions. He goes, but you know what you're doing, and then he's going to go on another diatribe.
I'll let you go. You go on a diatribe. I'll happily listen.
Did he have RAS? No, it didn't exist.
Right?
Did he have probable cause? No. So him impeding Mr. Terry's freedom was against the law. The cop who stopped Terry broke the law and violated Terry's civil rights. He broke the law, not Terry. That's the law you keep defending, an unconstitutional law that was passed because they didn't want to indict a racist cop back in Cleveland.
Well, but we understand how case law, we do understand how case law works, right? So especially something that goes up to the Supreme Court, right? It took I believe it was the Fourth Amendment, and it interprets it, it analyzes it, it dissects it, and then it applies that according to that specific case and how that is interpreted. So based on how that is interpreted, any cases that follow the precedence of that will abide by that interpretation of the highest court, right? The highest court being the Supreme Court. If this was like a state thing, then that state would only recognize case law there. But this went all the way up to the Supreme Court. So it may have not technically been legal, for instance, how you interpret it at that time, but the way it was interpreted all the way up to the Supreme Court was that what the Fourth Amendment was providing in that moment in order for him to stop and frisk the gentleman was interpreted to be okay. And so any instances going forward will abide under that interpretation. It doesn't take away the Fourth Amendment. It doesn't negate the Fourth Amendment. It doesn't alter it. It interprets it based on the Supreme Court's ruling and how those judges interpret that law. That amendment, right? So before Terry, what the Supreme Court did was say it was legal what he did based on the interpretation of the Fourth Amendment. They're not saying it's illegal. They interpret it as okay. This is okay going forward. That's why case law is very vital in terms of precedence and how it's interpreted. It didn't say what he did was illegal. It interpreted the Fourth Amendment based on what happened in that moment. And it allowed going forward a stop and frisk to be okay.
Yeah, it's very bad case law that's turned America into a police state. That and qualified immunity and stealing money on the side of the road. These are all unconstitutional acts that the police absolutely love. They love them. Yeah.
I mean, I'm disagreeing with him because we've looped a couple of times. So it's not, I mean, I can loop again. I don't give a shit. But the point is that so bear in mind, haven't read Terry since 2015, and I've been out of law enforcement since 2019. So, been a while. But effectively, like the standard reasonable suspicion used for temporary investigations and stops called Terry stops is based on specific articulable facts that suggest a person may be engaged in a criminal activity. And so effectively, like, but we're in a gray area. So for instance, me saying white gentleman, 11 p.m. The reason why I lean towards consensual encounter was because he didn't have a hoodie, he didn't have a backpack. There's no way that I would be able to find the stolen goods because, like, I can see his clothes, like I can see everything. Maybe he could hide a few things in his Jinko jeans, but it wouldn't be like enough, right? And so that's why I lean towards That's why I lean towards a consensual.
What does that have to do with Terry versus Ohio? I don't get it.
I think that I probably could have argued that I had like a Terry stop with this young man, and I think I would have been right to do so.
The cops and the courts can always cop-splain and court-splain the rights of Americans away. But are you more for the American citizen? Or are you more for the American government?
I'm for that's why I'm not a libertarian. I'm a communitarian. I think we are individuals who must balance our rights and responsibilities in reference to the broader society. And I think that you're Don Quixote,
so you get to
jousting
people.
Windmills. You're like by yourself jousting windmills.
You feel like you get to control people that don't want to be controlled.
I don't do it anymore. I've been done with it since 2019. I did it for 4 years.
Yeah, again, you keep proving my point. It's a psychological thing. You people like you want to control others. You feel like your morals and your opinions and your hunches and your reasonable suspicion should be forced on somebody else who just happened to be walking home or decided to go to the grocery store and pick up some orange juice or something.
Yeah, but the same way that
and then there's people like me that don't want to be bothered by people like you that just want to be left alone.
I'm not trying to be too rude, but I think you're like a privileged baby. Okay, because yes, I think you're a privileged baby.
So the Constitution is a privilege.
Well, I mean, if you look at like force, then probably, but at the same time, I think that in general, you're probably just a privileged baby.
How?
So because you're saying, oh, well, I don't want to be taxed, and it's unconstitutional, and basically you can't do all this bullshit, but blah 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 blah.
Founding father, yeah. Founding father, yeah. Go on.
Meanwhile, like what most people are saying is, hey, I live in a fucking shithole and people need to come clean up the gosh darn mess. So if we go to Philadelphia, or if we go to Pittsburgh, or if we go to Baltimore, if we go to any of these places that have like a ton of crime, then cops need the latitude in order to deal with people who are doing crimes. So for instance, like you don't think drug consumption should be illegal? Well, there's entire cities, there's thousands of people downtown who are shitting and pissing in open public because they're addicted to drugs. That's why we legislated against it, because there was a communal impact from individual behavior.
So the drug
war. So we banned the individual behavior.
So Richard Nixon's drug war has been going on since the 70s. How's that going so far?
We cut violence in half since 1992.
What?
So that's okay.
What is it?
We've cut violence in half since like 1992. So I would say in that regard, it's actually going okay.
What kind of violence?
Homicides.
Because of what?
I would say mass incarceration.
So it's your opinion that mass incarceration has made the American less violent?
Yeah. I would also say video games and increases in medical care.
So you're a hardcore statist communist.
Yes, I fucking love the state. I think that the average person is a dumb IQ savage.
You don't believe in individual freedom. You don't mind that form.
No, I believe in individual freedom tempered by rationality.
Enforced by who? Psychopaths with guns?
Yes, as all societies are.
Can you tell me?
Hold on, real quick. This is actually an important question. Can you name a society that lasted more than a decade that wasn't enforced by guns or arms?
United States.
When?
What do you mean when? The whole
when
point
did the
of the
United States
Constitution
exist for more than a decade without force?
The whole point of the Constitution is to restrict the government. Talk about going in a loop.
But your answer
I watched some of your videos for 4 hours and you seemed decent. But now you admit it. Everything, all my talking points I had against you, you admit them. You don't mind that we're 40 trillion in debt. You don't mind that we use fake money. You don't mind that you ruin lives with the drug war. The drug war is just a war on people. that's been going on for 50 years. And the only people that want drugs to be illegal are drug dealers and police. They make the most amount of money from it, and the prisons, of course. You guys make all that money, the pension money. You get to live your status lifestyle. And you believe in unconstitutional case law. You're always favoring the state. You believe in cops stealing money from Americans on the side of the road. You don't mind Americans' freedom being impeded. You don't mind Americans' information all over their car. You're just 1,000% a statist bootlicker, bar none.
Sure. And I think that the fact that you could not name a single society that existed without like force of arms,
United States,
and then you cited the United States, but that's not even true. We had the Revolutionary War in 1776. We had like the Barbary Pirate Wars
against England in
1814. We had the Native American Wars throughout the entirety of the 19th century. We had the Civil War in 1865. We had slave catcher patrols. We had like so much fucked up shit going on that was all predicated upon force.
We're talking about two different things.
Yeah, I'm saying, is there a society that exists that isn't predicated upon force? And you brought up a single society that was completely predicated upon force.
Well, you didn't say predicated upon force the first time you said it, first of all. Of course.
Okay, then amend my statement.
Force is everything. Period. Okay.
And you don't have any.
There's guys who abuse force like you, and there's guys like me who don't abuse force.
But you don't have any to abuse.
And don't want to control people, and don't want to impede people's freedom, and don't want to steal their money.
Okay, can you look at this irony? Can you look at this irony, though? Huh? I, as an individual citizen, I do not have the capacity to do shit to you. Okay, I own your businesses, pay your taxes, whatever. However, I am engaged in paying taxes towards a state that then in turn has people with guns who are going to force you to do shit. Okay? But the point is that, like,
you love it.
Yes, I like civilization. I think civilization is great. Civilization is amazing.
So you love civilization through the barrel of a gun.
Society that functions differently.
That's your idea of civilization.
Show me another civilization that operates differently. Any throughout history, all of human history, the entire history of nature.
You're telling
show me a species that exists without the capacity for violence.
I never said anything like that, but government through the barrel of a gun is the worst kind of government. And anyone
that's
that supports
all government.
Dude, do I have to be that technical for you? Governments that use violence as a main source of control and not for the proper reasons are bad governments. And anyone that supports those type of governments is a bad person and doesn't care about individual freedom or humans in general.
Okay. Gentlemen, if you'd like to, because I do feel like we are looping as well, we could move into closing statements, and then we will maneuver over to open panel and maybe get some new questions up here to incite a little more conversation from there.
Sure.
Counterpoints, I will hand it over to you for your closing statement, please.
Yeah. So I actually am a constitutionalist. I actually do believe in the Constitution of the United States. I think that we have freedom of expression, freedom of conscience. I think we have the right to self-defense up to and including against a tyrannical government. I do think we have limits on when we can be seized by the government, and that's good. I think prohibitions against cruel and unusual punishment is amazing. I think that opening up citizenship to the broader American population so we didn't have chattel slaves was amazing. I am a liberal or libertarian in the sense that I think maximal human freedom is good, but I am also conservative in a lot of ways. And I would say that Edmund Burke has always been a huge influence on mine. Obviously, like the book, The Leviathan, I think is fundamentally true. Power abhors a vacuum. There's not a single human society, either prehistorical, medieval, ancient, current, contemporary, modern, in the future. There's not a single society that is not reliant on some degree. And there, of course, these things differ in spectrum, but there's always going to be some base violence in order to punish antisocial behavior and promote pro-social behavior. And I have no problems with that. I actually have no problems with a nation being a people. I have no problem with a country being a geographic area. I have no problem with a state being the manifest will of said people, and then those people through the feedback system of politics effectively deciding what their fate is. And if there's someone who truly thinks that they're like a sovereign individual, that they're born outside of the system, that they're not somehow reliant on these broader systems, number one, I think they're coping and screaming into the wind. Number two, I don't give a shit about their coping or screaming into the wind, because I think it's fucking silly. We are a competitive but also a collaborative species, and this is fucking whinging about having to pay taxes and live in a civilization, and I think it's silly.
Perfect. Thank you, Connor. And to you, John, your final statement, please.
Having to pay taxes? See, again, you're saying a bunch of things I never said. I don't mind paying constitutional taxes. I don't mind living in a community under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Everything I argue for is individual freedom, wealth, prosperity, and freedom from the government. Everything you argue for is control, power, your morals and your ideas pushed on someone else, whether they like it or not. And if they don't like it, you can impede their freedom. And if they resist you, you can take their life. Even if there's no victim, there's no damages, there's no trespass. They haven't done anything else other than go against your whims in your head. You feel like force can be used up into lethal force if some moron wrote down on a piece of paper doesn't jive with what that person believes is his freedom as an American. America means freedom. If America doesn't mean freedom, it doesn't mean anything at all. Otherwise, you're dealing with that. This guy thinks this guy's so pretentious. He believes in his brain that he's smarter than you and he's smarter than millions of people because he get put on a magic costume and he gets to control society because in his mind, he doesn't give a shit because you're just a privileged guy. Just go to work, grind away, not be able to afford anything because he's got a drug war to fight and he's going to get a pension, but you're not. That's the America he wants to live in. I want to live in the America where it's freedom. Money is actual money. Voluntary transactions are voluntary and the government doesn't need to stick their nose in everything. As a matter of fact, a lot of the things that cops and government take Americans' lives for should really be flipped on their head. And that's how we will reset and get our freedom back.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been dropping the link to the open pardon me. I have been dropping the link to the open panel in the live chat. If you would like to join to be able to ask your questions to John or Counterpoints, you're more than welcome to do so now. Feel free to jump in and hang backstage, and then I'll be bringing you all up shortly.
Take 5-minute break.
Yeah, if you'd like, I'll go ahead and start running through the super chats. You right. Jump back in when you're ready. And Counterpoints, these are over on your side. Grassroots, I think he's trolling you and having some fun here with the Big 20. Says, I'm incredibly cranky today and want to start by disavowing myself. And then he follows up to say, I do not know me. I have never met me, and my views do not represent me. Grassroots was also in Ryan Mullaley's chat the other night for his Third on Thursday, and he was talking about being in your chat too.
Grassroots is a conservatarian smartass who thinks that I'm too statist, but he does. He insults me while giving me money, so I have to let it slide.
That's fair. And Grassroots, I do enjoy insults with dollars behind them as well. Please feel free. But and then he follows up to say, with another 20, bullshit arrest. The police were pulling over everyone driving through this particular Walmart. I think that's another troll. You're welcome to respond, Connor, if you so choose, to any of those.
I don't even know if he's talking about himself or if he's talking about our friend over here. I have no idea who he's talking about. So, but actually, one of the weird things that I'll agree with our guest about is that I do think that like DUI checkpoints are weird because you're not starting with reasonable suspicion. You're not starting with probable cause. You're not starting with anything like that. You're effectively just throwing out a dragnet and then snatching people up. And I kind of think that's bullshit.
Fair enough. Millennial Mikey with a big 5 to say, you just need reasonable suspicion to detain an ID. You do not need probable cause. Terry versus Ohio. And obviously we got to that point later. Freedom comes in to say forced. Would they shoot you if you didn't?
Yes. And sorry, real quick, I just want to address that one. So I know people are like memeing about like, what's the limits of the First Amendment? What's the limits of the Second Amendment? What's the limit of the Fourth? And like, when can cops kill you? And then they say, oh, well, if I just act crazy in this way, then you can kill me. And the answer, unfortunately, is yes. Okay. That's like the answer. You can beat, he says, comply or die. I say you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. Okay. Typically 99% of the time, if you are detained, but then you surrender to that detention and then you go to court, you can beat bullshit charges. You can beat a fabricated case. You can beat all of that kind of stuff. Whereas if you fight it out on the side of the road, if you actually try to throw fisticuffs or resist arrest or whatever, then yeah, typically you're going to get pepper sprayed, you're going to get tased, you're going to get beaten. And if you pose a big enough of a threat, you might get shot and killed. I want a minimum amount of people to be shot and killed. Therefore, I say fight it in court, not on the street.
Fair enough. And then also Grassroots comes in to say with another 20 again, there are like 12 of these soft sit assholes. And frankly, their ability to just waste the fuck of productive people's time is admirable.
That's rude. And I disavow Grassroots.
Freedom says of the Big Ten, the police pull people over and take their cash if they are carrying it. Civil asset forfeiture. They take it without proving any crime.
If I could address that as well. So for instance, like I think there's a legitimate difference between a guy with $10,000 and he's kind of like a rural guy, no criminal history, never done anything bad. And he's on his way to like buy a car, right? That's the context where saying like, hey man, like number one, you shouldn't be searching my shit. I don't have any criminal things. But then number two, the criminal thing that you're accusing me of is I have a briefcase full of cash, but I don't have a prior record and I'm going to do a cash transaction. I think that's reasonable enough that a cop should say, yeah, okay, whatever. Like some people are weird. Some people like cash, right? But if it's a dude who's traveling across state lines, like based off of like cell phone research dozens of times, he's effectively like muling cash back and forth between multiple locations. And you can prove that through a subpoena or a warrant, and you can't prove an underlying crime, but you can prove that effectively he's been moving hundreds of thousands of dollars across the United States, acting as a what would you call it? Like a mule. If he's acting like a mule for cash and you can prove that, I think at that point, civil asset forfeiture is appropriate.
Okay. That's fair enough. Yeah. I think there's like a reasonable, there's reasonableness that should be applied.
People are
to
pissed.
Yeah.
People are correctly pissed because the latter has been used to justify the former. But when you look at the former, it's not very reasonable. It's just cops being dicks and taking cash. From
I think
people
we've
who
had
don't have records.
I think we've had too many bad eggs, or bad apples in the group that have done things that amplify the worrisome. And I think that's a reasonable worrisome. But it also, I don't know if that's like par for the course either, if that makes sense. All right. Grassroots comes in with a big 100 over for Connor and says, I spent a lot of my sparse free time working for the LP. I want it to be known most libertarians are normal people who hate their HOA and think they pay too much in tax, which is true. Either of you may respond.
I wish I could call myself a libertarian, but I can't because of anti-statists.
Okay. And John, anything from you?
Taxes is what made me an activist. Taxes are one of the most unconstitutional things there is. Well, excuse me. Direct, unapportioned taxes.
All right. Fourth Wiseman says, look up Heather Ann Tucci. She's Canadian and has gone through multiple battles with the IRS. Well, she's Canadian. Why would she? They
have their own. It's all part of that Federal Reserve system that he loves, that private-owned bank. That's a collection. The IRS is the police force for the Federal Reserve.
Okay. Fair enough. And then FHEL says this is for LVL4. Thank you. I guess cookies for something.
Level 4. Basically, we were talking about the cop shootings last week, and I kept getting into arguments with what I would call like soy liberals over whether or not shootings were like legally justified or whatever. But we never moved into, is ICE overstepping their bounds? Are they violating the Fourth Amendment? Are they being used as a new Gestapo? Are they harassing American citizens along with non-citizens? Like, should we even care about immigration? So he kind of wants to get into the Fourth Amendment violations and the immigration, whereas we probably spend 80% of the time talking about the shooting, not because of Foul Runner, but because of other people who were fighting me in my chat, which was frustrating.
You're not liberal?
I think that maximal human freedom is good, but I think that we all disagree on where maximal human freedom is.
Wow, bro. You're like the
so for instance, like
you're the Jordan Peterson of this stuff, bro. So you're a liberal? Are you a Republican, a Democrat, a liberal, a leftist?
I would say I'm what a Republican should be.
Which is?
Somebody who believes in a republic and the rule of law and balance of power.
So Bill of Rights. So we keep going back to the Bill of Rights, but then you don't believe in the Bill of Rights the same way I do, because you believe you can control people. You believe in private unconstitutional banks, unconstitutional IRS, unconstitutional taxes, unconstitutional drug laws.
Because I've read more than just the Bill of Rights.
You can't be both.
Yeah, no, actually, you can believe that most people should be secure in their papers and effects. You can believe that people should be free to express their conscience and their earnestly held beliefs. And you can still believe that there's limits. For instance, like I brought up assault earlier in the conversation. Like, so Congress shall pass no law abridging the freedom of speech, and yet we have limits on assault, which is effectively like if I say I'm gonna come whoop your butt or something like that. It's threats, but it's still words, man. It's still words at the end of the day, and yet we put this reasonable restriction on this behavior, and we incarcerate people
It's words with the ability to carry out the threat and put a person in imminent danger. It's not just words. It's not just words.
Speech?
Huh?
It's still speech, though, right?
Remember the endangerment part?
Yes, but then what I would say is following that through, because we talked about this with like restricted areas in public hospitals or whatever. I would say that we should start with the Bill of Rights as a North Star of how our society should conduct ourselves. And then we should carve out the reasonable limitations that we agree upon as a society.
You mean amend it?
I think you call them unconstitutional infringements.
When's the last amendment we made without doing it?
I don't know.
Unlawfully. Exactly. So you agree
probably
with me?
Like prohibition,
huh?
I don't know. There might have been. No, I think it might have been prohibition.
Okay, let's say it's prohibition. So how many tens of thousands of unconstitutional laws have been passed since then?
Probably tons.
Okay, so how are we gonna fix that? By passing more?
No, you fight it out in court, and you fight out why it's not constitutional.
Fight it out in court.
Yes. So for instance,
have you been to a court in the last 30 years?
Yeah.
And you think the courts follow the Constitution?
Says the 27th Amendment to the United States Constitution is the most recent amendment ratified in 1992. That's salary. It prohibits any law increasing or decreasing the salary of members of Congress from taking effect until after the next election of the House of Representatives. As a fucking assholes.
Wow.
Good, dirty.
Here's a good metric for me. Here's a good metric for me, for someone to me, if they believe in the Bill of Rights or not. First, second, fourth are the most important, in my opinion. The other ones are very important, but the first, second, and fourth are super, super important. In my opinion, the fact that there's a plate on my car where the government can just scan it and know everything about me, that is such an infringement on the Fourth Amendment that I think that Americans should be up in arms. And how do you feel about that?
I don't care.
So you don't care that people's privacy gets violated? That's, again, you're a typical cop. You could care less about people's privacy. You could care less about their individual rights. You care less if they get shot. You care less if their money's stolen on the side of the road.
No. You're adding a lot to it. The reason why I don't. Okay, so hold on. Let me articulate.
You said it all.
I think license plates are annoying as shit. Okay, I hate that I have to register them. I hate that I have to pay a fee for them. Okay, hold on. But they serve a social purpose, which is that. Hold on. There's a ton of cars of similar makes, models, and years that are on the roadway. And there's also a lot of errant traffic behavior where people engage in reckless behavior that we have legislated they are not allowed to engage in because it kills people every single year. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure like after cancer and heart disease, accidents is like the next cause of death within the United States. And so as a result, the license plate being tied to a registered owner allows it where if there's a traffic incident, if there's an attempt to pull someone over, et cetera, then you can easily identify the person who has that motor vehicle. That way people can't just speed off and do whatever the fuck they want. And if you think that doesn't happen, then you just need to talk to any cop who works in a major city, because effectively what happened is the gangs have started renting cars through their family members' names, and then they do whatever the fuck they want in said cars because they know that the registration information isn't going to come back to them. It's going to come back to the rental car dealership. And then even if you go to the rental car dealership with a subpoena, then what's going to happen is you're going to get the person who rented the car, not the person who was driving it.
You're
and so they're reckless and they kill people.
Bro, you like the filibuster. So you're saying the Fourth Amendment.
It's cops playing to you.
Yeah, you are. So the Fourth Amendment is inconvenient to your police work, is what I'm hearing.
No, I don't think a license plate is a violative of the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah, you're driving on a public
if I have
road.
the right to, if I'm walking on a public street, do I have the right to privacy?
Relatively speaking, yeah, as long as you're not doing anything else.
I sure do, right?
Yeah.
The government can't walk up to me and, first of all, they can't just, well, they're trying to do this and they're moving towards this because they know people are getting pissed off with the slave card. So now they're just making it all facial recognition and artificial intelligence. That's the future, your face. And then they're just going to make it illegal for you to put a face covering on. These are the things that your mentality is bringing forward. These are all the things that my mentality is trying to stop. So if I have the right to privacy under the Fourth Amendment when I'm walking on the sidewalk, that means why would my right to privacy end when I get inside my private vehicle?
Because they've already ruled that there's a motor vehicle conveyance exception because it's both public and private simultaneously. There's a public interest making sure.
Your overlords that you worship said that.
No, the government that was established by, of, and for the people of the United States of America. The legislators that we put into office.
But that's not true. Again, that's not true.
The legislators didn't pass that. The courts didn't pass that. The people who were appointed by our current Republican democratic system.
For and by the people is not true. Just ask any American if they trust their government and if our government is for and by the people. Like these are slogans that slow people spew.
Before we continue down that rabbit hole, I'd like to. We do have a lot of super chats to get to that I'd like to be able to acknowledge.
Do another half hour if that's okay, Sarah.
Yeah, we do have a full panel backstage, so we're going to keep your responses to the super chats short and concise then, and that way we can get people up here to ask you more questions. James with the Big Ten says, please explain why the U.S. dollar is losing 96% of its value since the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913 is a good thing. Connor, I think that was to you.
He loves it.
Yeah, we would have to talk about gold, fiat, proportional value, macro econ. I don't have a simple answer.
Fair enough.
Because you don't have a simple answer for anything, bro, and that's why it's everything in your life so convoluted, and you have to explain your way through life.
Yeah, the world's complex.
It's not. It's really not that complex. You don't hurt people. It's good and bad. You know the difference between good and bad. Your parents taught you to it, and then the academy brainwashed it right out of your head. You know the difference between good and evil. Come on.
Freedom says with the big 20, but whether the Constitution really be one thing or another, this much is certain, that it has either authorized such a government as we have had or has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist.
That's Lysander Spooner, and it's actually the latter. It hasn't helped it to exist. And the founder said, I give you a republic if you can keep it. That means if you can fight people off like that. That's what they meant by that. Fight this mentality off, this control everybody mentality.
All right. Connor, anything from you?
I don't have a short answer.
Fair enough. Grassroots says with a big 100, I pay more in tax than this creature has earned in his life. I'm Hispanic. I've been of more service to this country than this 400-pound hog.
Now, before you get upset, he could be talking about me. So let's
I was just sitting here wondering who to send that to because I was like, which was he talking about? Because I know
he's talking a lot of crazy shit. And, he's my community member, so that's probably directed. But
I pay more in taxes than this creature earned in his life. Who's he talking about? Even if he's talking about me, how does he know that? I'm Hispanic. I'm Hispanic. Who cares that you're Hispanic? I've been more of service to this country than this 400-pound hog. How does he know me? Like this is the type of stuff I got to deal with all the time. Like,
grassroots.
That's not even coherent. That's not even coherent.
Fair enough.
Grassroots.
Damn it, grassroots, you and your money. Michael with the Big 10, thank you for hosting this excellent local neighborhood council meeting. Yes, I feel like you guys are probably like right up the street from each other. Fourth Wiseman says, no one is a member. Huh?
You play pool, Connor?
Do I play pool?
Yeah.
Terribly. Like I have this thing where I have like 3 beers and I play really well for 20 minutes, but then I crash and then I start playing terribly. And then my father who plays pool gets embarrassed by how I play pool.
Cool. Sorry.
Yeah.
Fourth Wiseman says, no one is a member of any society without knowledge of being so, i.e. Law Society, Lost Dog Society, et cetera, et cetera. If you haven't signed a membership of a society, then you're not in that society.
I don't agree.
John?
I think what he's trying to say there is this world that the government and people like him created in their mind that we didn't sign up for that world, and you trying to force it on us is only going to create more and more violence. That's all that is. That's all that leads to is more revolution and more violence.
The argumentation that I would make is when we're born into this world, we have doctors, we have nurses, we have our family members who take care of us, and if we live correctly, then we should have similar people who help us leave this world. And so no one gets anywhere on their own. And I think it's an illusion to believe so.
All right.
Okay.
Sean says, brain damage repair fund contribution. Buying a pew for brain repair will be a campaign fund violation.
I disavow. Rude.
Freedom says most civil asset forfeitures are less than $20,000, which proves these are not drug busts. Also, it's an amount that costs more in attorney's costs to get it back. Institute for Justice.
We differentiated that a little bit earlier. I think that cops have made a really bad name for themselves. So, for instance, having like a 6-year-old man going to buy a used car with $9,000 in his possession, and then they hit him with civil asset forfeiture. I think that's bullshit. I think that they should be able to prove more than that. As a result, I brought up the muling of cash back and forth across the United States.
The fact that you believe someone has to prove to the government where they got their money, to me, that thing, you have a mental illness that you believe the government has any right to know where any one of my pennies came from, or anybody else that's an American.
So if you drive to Florida to the Mexican border 10,000 times over the course of 10,000 days, and you're ferrying $10,000, $20,000 worth of cash towards the Mexican border every single day, that's nobody's business.
If you catch me committing a crime, arrest me.
Okay.
Other than that, mind your business. The founding fathers made it very clear. Better that 100 guilty men go free than 1 innocent man goes to jail. The exact opposite of what you and your cronies believe.
You're not going to jail. You're just giving up the $10,000 cash that you're muling to the Mexican border.
Yeah. You're only giving up your life savings. Like, listen to yourself, bro. Do you say this stuff in front of a mirror? Say that to the lady whose food truck, she had $93,000. And because they didn't like her, they pulled over her food truck and stole her life savings and ruined her family's life. This isn't jokes, bro. This isn't funny.
I think I brought up an example that said that is not what I would be pushing for.
But you said you agree with this crap, dude.
I've already articulated the difference between the two things that I agree with.
Just because you can articulate for 5 minutes doesn't make you right. You're just word salading and cops-plaining. That's all that is. It's very simple. Right, wrong, good, bad. Steal, don't steal. Kill, don't kill. Rape, don't rape. Then there's people like you that try to convolute everything. Everything I said that's bad is objectively bad. And just because you want to mix it all up and turn it into garbage doesn't make it untrue. There's objective reality, and you don't live in it.
Let's OTVO with the Big Ten says match for John in the Constitution. Freedom says, should cops go to jail for going to the wrong house, kicking in doors, throwing in flash grenade, and then cuffing the family even after they realize their mistake?
Depends on when they realize their mistake.
Fair enough. Jason says with the Big Ten, John, by your standards, we'd have 342 million people decide what they think is right and wrong. No one can tell a person what to do.
As long as there's no victim, damages, trespass, or endangerment of the public, yeah, you can do whatever you want as a free person. Yes. There's nothing wrong with that. No one's ever proven that wrong in my lifetime. No one. Not yet, not ever. You can't prove that wrong. You can't. Go ahead, I'm ready.
James says, founding fathers intended for the Bill of Rights to only apply to the federal government, not the states. So saying 4A applies to Ohio and claim to be with the founders makes no sense.
Ohio has their own 4A, guys. Come on.
Well, what I was going to say is I think that's been overruled by the supremacy clause. So, but before, for instance, different states had state religions and all that kind of crap. I don't think that's been a thing since the Civil War.
Fair enough. Brick, who's hanging out backstage, says matching Let's OTVO. It says support our veterans who uphold and defend our rights. Constitution win. Connor LLL. Sarah, thank you. John win. Counterpoints doesn't like his points being countered. For the record, Connor, you are a veteran as well, too. Veteran and a retired.
And I'm having a great time. He's Hispanic. I'm Irish. We're both passionate people who like fighting about topics. I'm having a great time. Otherwise, I wouldn't do this.
Who's Hispanic?
I thought you were Hispanic.
Profile, typical cop profiling me. Go on.
I thought you said that in reference to Grassroots Hegemon.
Yeah, I thought so too, actually.
I thought Grassroots Hegemon said that he was Hispanic, and then you said, bro, I'm Hispanic. I thought you said that.
I was reading his comment. I was reading his comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I understood that the same way.
I'm Greek. Go on.
Well, you're Mediterranean.
Grassroots comes up with the big 50, says, Connor, Pittsburgh isn't like that. Philadelphia is the only place a person tried to carjack me. Pittsburgh, pretty cool. Foofs? What is Foofs? Foofs fucking great.
Food, probably food.
Oh, foods. Yes. Fair enough. Any thoughts to that, Connor?
I'm always pleasantly surprised when I go to a smaller city or whatever. I went to Cincinnati. I love Cincinnati. I went to Milwaukee. I love Milwaukee. So I think every area has its charm.
Fair enough. Fourth Wiseman says, Counterpoints, please name the society that you keep referring to that you base your belief system upon. The society of?
But realistically, I just think that it's been like this since humans have ever existed. Even when we were in tribal societies, we deferred judgment to chieftains, council of elders, all that kind of stuff. And exile, death, banishment, punishment, losing of hands. These were the kind of the justices in the ancient world. So pretty much as soon as you get a human society above 30 people, you're going to have, you might not have government per se that rules are written down, but you're basically going to have the organs of government. Like if you don't have a king, you're going to have a chief. If you don't have a senate, you're going to have a council of elders. So I think power abhors a vacuum, and you just have to design how power is distributed and counters each other in order to have a good society.
Fair enough. Any thoughts to that, John? No.
Give government as much power as possible. No one gets any freedom, period. Who needs that crap anyway? Am I right, Connor? Next question.
As maximally as possible.
Zonia, hello to you, Zonia, over on Connor's side. Comes with a big hundo. It says, never give this guy a P320. What's a P320?
Yes.
That guy was holding.
So,
waistband.
This has not been proven yet, but I've seen this video a dozen times on Twitter.
That's not what happened.
So, well, I'll just describe it, even if it's not what happened. Maybe it's an AI fake. I have no idea. But effectively, what happens is like one ICE officer grabs the gun, disarms him, and turns to run away. And then the other guy, like they scream gun or whatever, and then the guy's getting shot. Well, SIG P320s, allegedly, don't sue me, SIG. But they have like a drop safe issue where effectively, if they get knocked around, sometimes they'll go off. And so basically, there's a very blurry, to be clear, very blurry video of the ICE cop walking away, and it looks like the slide being at the rear, as if there was an accidental discharge from the seized weapon of the guy who got his gun taken. So could be bullshit, could be real, no idea.
Highly
Fair
doubt
enough.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for the oil.
Cops take your money based on drug sniff alone, and 98% of all money has drug residue.
That's why you should use a credit card. Or debit card.
Or obey the Bill of Rights and your oath to the Constitution if you're a cop.
Fair enough. James says, finishing the goal without an insult. Thank you, James. I happily oblige to insults. Freedom says, great debate. Thanks to both of you. Yes, thank you to both of you. This has been rather pleasant. Freedom also says the reasons why he doesn't care about laws is because he is a member of the police. The laws don't apply to them. They get pulled up and
over,
say,
I'm sure.
Over and say I was a cop, and they let him swerve on down the road. I think that's to you, Connor. Any thoughts?
Thin blue line is a lot more popular in the Northeast. I have friends who live in New York City, and they'll tell me like nightmare stories of cops sweeping each other for like DUI or battery or whatever. In the state of Florida, state police in particular are charged with arresting other cops. They're basically told, if it's a county sheriff, if it's a local cop, we don't give a fuck who they are. We will arrest them. And they kind of told us that at the academy. They were like, don't fuck. Like, you think that thin blue line shit is going to fly here? You better hope that it's a cop from your agency and not a state cop, because they will fuck your shit up immediately. Also, like, I do think it's funny. I got a speeding ticket. Well, I didn't bring up I was a cop number one, but I did get a speeding ticket since. Yeah, that sucked. I wish I had used my cop privilege, but I didn't.
Right. And I'm about to open the panel up here in just a second. Anyone backstage, if you are cammed up, you will have priority. There is a long line back there. So now's the time to turn your camera on if you want to be first in line. Texas Bully Mom says, just doing a drive-by. Oh, pun intended. Can't listen to CP, so I'll be back when he's gone, or open panel. Damn, Counterpoints, making frenemies everywhere. She also sends love to Opie. Yes, our darling little Opie puppy. She's upstairs sleeping right now. Thank you, Texas Bully Mom. And Iotin asks one question and says, so who determines what makes someone a victim of a crime? John, to you?
Common sense. If I punch you in the face, you're a victim. If I grab you, you didn't want to be grabbed, you're a victim. If I spit in your face, you're a victim. If I swerve my cards toward your car, I endangered you. If I push you in front of a car, I created a victim. If I'm on your property, I'm trespassing. Should I keep going?
No, okay. I think that's good. Connor, to you?
Society and laws, obviously.
All right, that's fair. All right. What? All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the panel as a kind reminder. We did this last night. We're going to do one question.
Can I ask something real quick, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when slavery was the law, you would enforce it?
No.
Why not?
Because I'm a Yankee.
Let's say you were the part of the country back then when slavery was legal. You were a cop back then, and your job was to.
Okay, if I was slavery. A Confederate, well, hold on. Number one, this is like a total like misattribution thing. Okay. Typically, when people are members of societies and they understand their social context, that's like asking, like, in Nazi Germany, you would have been a Nazi. Yeah, probably, because I was born in Nazi Germany and raised with Nazi propaganda.
We're both born in America, but I don't act like you.
Yeah, but I think you have a total misunderstanding.
Not all Germans were Nazis.
Culture and law.
Not all Germans were Nazis.
That they did. The ones who weren't Nazis were so weak and ineffective that they allowed the Nazis to take over and do all the Nazi shit. So saying like, hold on, let me ask you a question.
So you would have thrown them in.
You're
So you
Greek.
would have been at the oven door, shoving them in the ovens.
Oh, and so you're Greek. So let's ask this question real quick, okay? I'm going to
go
pretend
ahead.
that you're Hispanic for fun. So if you were a conquistador in South America during the Age of Exploration, do you think you would have taken like a Native American wife and hunted down Native Americans?
No, because I don't believe in violence except for self-defense. Unlike you.
Okay, so hold on. It doesn't matter. The whole point is like a historical thing. Yes, we are products of our environment.
No, I'm not a product of this environment. You are.
Okay.
I was able to break my conditioning. You can't.
I think you're alone or close to alone.
I'm alone. Okay.
Well,
Over
nobody's
100
going to
million
be
views.
alone.
Over
I'm going to
100
go
million
ahead
views. I guess I'm
and
alone.
bring your panelists up. Buckle up, gentlemen. Here we go.
Oh my gosh.
What was that? Whose house was that so we can call the cops on him?
Not sure. Somebody is dying. All right, lady and gentlemen, we're gonna run this a very particular way. If everybody could mute your mics, unless I'm particularly giving you the mic to utilize, that would be incredibly helpful, with exception to John and Counterpoints, because this is their discussion to have. We are kind of starting a new format for open panel for the beginning portion. Anyone who made their way to the stage for the first round, you will all be able to ask or provide your comments. Oh, we lost one. I'll just add you up. You will be able to provide your questions or comments and get a quick, concise answer. And then once everyone around the room gets their responses, then we will move into open floor completely. All right. So that's how we're going to do it. All right. Mr. Balderson, you were first in line backstage. I want to hand the floor over to you to ask your question or make your comment to either of the two.
Thank you. Mr. Counterpoints. So in the actual debate prompt of our officers trained to break the Constitution, there is a workshop called the Street Cop Workshop, and they train 20 to 30,000 officers every year, and they are currently under civil litigation, including admitted by the state comptroller that they are absolutely training people to do whatever they want to break the constitutional rights, including some of the checklists for things that they've decided that people are criminal and they have reasonable cause to detain them for are things like licking lips to lubricate lies, that smoking suggests criminal activity because a motorist would only smoke during a car stop for just 3 reasons. They're trying to mask an odor, to calm themselves down, or it's their last cigarette before they go to jail. The list goes on. And these officers are absolutely trained to do these things, which is breaking our civil rights in order to get away with the power trips that they want to do. Giant case. What do you have to say about that?
What I would say is that that's not an academy thing. That's obviously like an add-on course thing. Also, what I would say is that no tobacco.
Hold on, Steve. I want everybody else mute up. Go ahead, Connor.
Well, I thought he was asking me a follow-up question. What was the follow-up question?
Well, it is training, though, right? just to clarify. I mean, you're trying to make some differentiation there, but the prompt was training, and this is a training course that 20 to 30,000 officers take every year.
Okay. And
So
what
we're
I
not
would also
really-
say is that if we're dealing with things like plain view doctrine, if we're dealing things like commonly like so for instance, like the reason why I laugh about the cigarette thing is because back when I was in high school and I was smoking marijuana, I covered up marijuana smell with tobacco smell 100%. That's why I was laughing. So like, you know, making cops aware that sometimes potheads cover up weed smell with tobacco, that's something that I didn't think about, but it's true. So like if you had somebody, so if you're walking up to somebody and somebody's like, you know, chain smoking the cigarette real quick, and then you kind of catch a whiff of, the sticky icky. Well, marijuana is mostly legal most places now, so I don't even think this applies anymore. But if I saw somebody like slamming a cigarette and blowing themselves with smoke, and I was in a state where weed was illegal, then I kind of be like, oh, all right, well, I'm gonna see if I smell a little bit of weed. Like, I don't think that's that crazy of a thing.
Can you believe they put people in metal cages for smoking weed, Connor?
No, I'm actually happy that era of the world is ending.
Oh, so you don't think people should be treated like animals for smoking a plant, huh?
Well, I mean, I probably think that marijuana is probably less harmful than alcohol. So I actually think that
1,000%.
Yeah, so I think that if alcohol is legal for recreational consumption, then marijuana should be. But just because I think marijuana should be consumable for recreational consumption doesn't mean that I think like heroin.
Why? What's the
meth,
difference? Why?
Or what?
Why?
Because of the deleterious correlated social and physiological effects.
Would you advocate for legalization of cannabis?
Steve, hold on, Steve.
Yes.
This is between either Ben. I'm going to say this very loud and proud right now. The format right now that we are in is one commenter at a time with John and Connor. We will open the floor later, but not right now. Everybody else should be muted up. John and Connor. Ben, is your question answered, sir?
I don't see how that answered the question at all when they're in a giant lawsuit. I understand that.
You said, what do you feel about that? I told you how I felt about it.
People do that. That doesn't mean you get to arrest everybody that's smoking a cigarette.
That's not what they said, is it?
And that is what's happening because they're using that as probable cause. And there's a whole list of things that basically sound like Jeff Foxworthy making a fucking "you might be a criminal" jokes, and they've gotten in trouble by the state for that. The state even admits it, but you're up here and you're like, well, no, that's not what it's doing. Even the state admitted that. New Jersey is on fire because of it.
He's downplaying it.
Okay.
Oh, he just showed a few people the video. Oh, just a few bad apples. He's an apologist for the state. 100%.
Well, I mean, I would say as an example, like I think New York's stop and frisk is unconstitutional because they're hold on, but this is where you and I differ. So, for instance, like I still think a Terry stop is legal. And I also think that what he said, so for instance, like smoking tobacco really quick to mask the scent of other narcotics or whatever, I think that's an interesting training thing. So that's actually like a bad example for what he's bringing up. But the reason why, hold on, let me finish. I'm almost done. The reason why stop and frisk is unconstitutional inside the state of New York is because it's a dragnet. They're not articulating why they're stopping and frisking people. They're just stopping and frisking everybody. And I also think that their stats don't bear out that they're actually like catching the people that they're supposed to be catching, because I think it's less than 1% of the time do they actually ever find anything.
It's also a crime.
Okay.
All right.
You got no problem with the government committing crimes.
I said the opposite 3 seconds ago. You're just not listening.
So
yeah, he agreed that New York just running stop and frisk as is like a catch-all.
It's illegal. It's unconstitutional.
They're not able to verbalize why, and he's saying that is the wrong part.
So everyone who engaged in it should do some time then, right?
No.
Why not?
Because they should somebody should sue and say that stop and frisk as it's currently implemented is unconstitutional. They should try to win in court and then have it rewrite the law. I don't know why that's
basically,
funny. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that's what happened, by the way.
Keep the same impossible system we have now that they used to keep us mushed down and fight it that way and hope that 20, 30 years from now we can get it overturned.
What's your solution? Bitching about it on the internet and having no impact whatsoever because you're one of 6 people who believe what you believe?
Actually, over 100 million views, and I have a lot of people who thank me. And again, all you're doing is straw man. You don't know me that well at all. And I am an activist since the 90s. You're violating rights since then, since before I was an activist since before you were born, probably. So I don't know what you're talking about. Your stats don't match up to mine, so don't even come at me with that. You were violating rights. I was defending rights. It's a big difference between you and I. And you admitted it. And you admitted it to everybody here.
I'd like to respond to one of the super chats. Freedom says, "Would you support life sentences for cops planting drugs?" Connor, I believe this is you.
Yeah, I'd do 10 or 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And Grassroots. Grassroots says, "I want to make it abundantly clear, Pisco is fat." We love you, Pisco. Sorry. I guess
he's not even here.
He's not. Well, he was in your chat earlier, I believe. Clay, I want to hand it over to you, sir, if you'd like to ask your question.
Very cool. Yeah, so I'm probably going to direct towards Connor. So a good friend of mine, a veteran, has 2 videos. One where officers were violating my rights and his rights on his channel. And the officer that responded was a trainee. That officer had a trainer training him to violate our rights because we had a camera in a public access place. Why do they do that? Why are they training, literally training? There's a video on Let's OTVO's channel right now that you can go look at. Also, I want to point you to another video that he has on his channel where they're literally at a seminar at a university, which is a public college, violating our rights. Why are they doing that? Why are they training?
Can you be more specific with the public college thing?
So a federal trainee at that university being trained clearly to violate my rights, putting her hands on me because I was looking inside of a room that's at a public university.
Okay. Weirdly enough, I think this gets back into what John and I were talking about, which is effectively like, what's the limits of your ability to do shit in public, right? And so I think that the people, so let's say that you're in a public place, sidewalk, whatever, by a public building, and you're filming a location or whatever. As far as I understand, like, you have the First Amendment rights to do so and don't need to identify unless they're able to articulate another crime. Now, loitering and prowling gets like a little weird, but typically loitering and prowling is used in order to protect a like private business, right? Like, you have to articulate how this person is loitering and prowling and how their LMP is going to affect somebody else negatively. So that bad training, I'm just going to say it straight up. I worked law enforcement. A third of them were the most amazing human beings I've ever met in my entire life. A third of them were super normal. A third of them sucked ass. So if you bumped into a few cops who sucked ass, I wouldn't be surprised.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't bumped into. No, they're training.
No, you're saying the FTO and the trainee were both wrong. And so I'm saying the trainee probably didn't know better, and I'm saying the trainer probably sucked ass.
So he was being trained to violate our rights.
Well, but I'm saying that a third of cops are slurred. So, like, I wouldn't say that that's like a broad, broad indication of what's going to be in your academy textbook.
So get rid of a third of cops.
No, hold on. This guy was
get rid of a third of cops. If I could get rid of a third of cops and replace them with better cops, I would, absolutely.
This is a 29-year veteran.
Of what?
Of the police force. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Of what?
Dude, there were cultural changes of the guard that you would not believe. Okay. And so as an example, I would say that in the past like 10 years or so, the increase in cell phone cameras and the increase in universal body worn cameras or whatever, it hasn't solved all the problems. It's done a lot of good. And so if you think that like shit is bad now, I would say 80s and 90s cops are 10 times more likely to do fucked shit than modern cops.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I have only one more follow-up. I'll give it off to somebody else. So in the policy of the city where I live, the policy says that the officers are to take the oath. That is not in congruence with the statute or the Constitution, where it says they must subscribe and take the oath. Why is it that the policy violates the Constitution? Why is it that it violates the actual statute where they must actually sign it and only Boy Scout take it? Because that's what they actually do here. That's literally we found that.
With their oath of office, or what are you talking about?
To subscribe it. They're supposed to sign it, and they don't, or at least that's what we're being told. And the policy reflects that. Why are they being told, policy-wise, trained not to sign their oath?
Sorry, just real quick, because there's a couple ideas here. Okay. So the oath or whatever is actually like really similar to like the military oath, right? You know, so help me God, blah, 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 enemies, foreign and domestic, et cetera, et cetera.
There's a signature that goes with it. Yep.
But when you're talking about the policy, weirdly enough, I had to sign every single page of my policy, effectively acknowledging that if I violated said policy, I would be liable for administrative punishment. So are you saying that they're not signing their policy, or are you saying they're not signing their oath?
Their oath.
I don't know, man. That sounds fucky.
It is. Yeah. But I appreciate your answer. There you go. Anyway, I'll hand it off.
Thank you, Clay. Osmosis to you, sir.
Hey, so Counterpoints, big fan, but disagree with you on a few things. I'm Brett here, so take it easy on me. So with the shooting that just happened, like, do you ever think there's a time when a civilian should be able to approach a police officer and interject themselves if they believe the police are doing something wrong? Do you think that's something that should be able to happen? Yeah, so you do.
Well,
so then
but hold on, morally versus legally, and we should differentiate those things. But I can tell you're just getting into it, so I'll shut up.
Legally or morally? No, legally or morally. Take either or.
Morally, yes. So for instance, like the people who were around George Floyd as he was dying from positional asphyxia, if they had tried to like push cops off of him because they thought that they were trying to save that guy's life or whatever, I think that they would be morally just in doing so. But I would also not be surprised if they were then subsequently charged and incarcerated.
Yeah, that's fair. So then, do you think that having a gun in your waistband while performing that would, say, pose enough threat to the police officer for them to turn around and shoot?
Yeah. But hold on. Here's the thing though. So I think people have correctly said the mere possession of a firearm is not sufficient to warrant a death sentence, right? Like Second Amendment of the United States, right to keep and bear arms, et cetera, et cetera. But I think resisting arrest while in the position of a firearm,
not resisting arrest. No, let's differentiate between the two. It's not resisting arrest. You have interjected yourself into a position where you think something unjust is happening to a different civilian, and say you're pushing. So, for example, it might look like someone's getting raped by the police officer. Yeah, whether they're actually doing it or not, that's how the other civilian sees it. Runs up, pushes her off, or pushes the police officer off. Yeah, and then the police officer gets back up, sees a gun in the waistband, fires, thinking his life's in danger. Right?
Well, I think the reason why I might have difficulty answering your question is because we could talk about it hypothetically. If a law enforcement officer was committing a crime and you had no other means but to
not in a committing a crime, because I'm saying
if you're talking about
committing a crime.
So let's just use Minnesota. Let's just be specific then. So for instance, like the cop pepper sprays the woman or whatever, and or I think he shoves the woman first, right? Yep. Shoves the woman to the ground. And then it looks like the cop is going to follow up and is probably going to detain them. And then the gentleman from Minnesota walks up, puts himself in the way, gets pepper sprayed or whatever. Okay. So at that point, I would have to look up like the federal obstruction statutes or whatever. But at that point, if that cop had an intent, like he thought that cop or the lady was interfering with the ICE investigation, he has the right to detain. He's going for the detention. Then you have another civilian that's interfering because they don't like how rough they're being or whatever. At that point, you're going to be subject to detention as well, because you're basically interjecting yourself in the lawful performance of duties.
Comply or die.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can beat the rat, but not the ride.
It's not the same thing.
The problem is that if you,
I know you keep saying the other one, I keep saying what I say.
I keep saying the one that actually happens on the streets.
Go ahead, Osmosis.
Sorry, Osmosis, go ahead.
If you believe that like the officer is committing a crime, if that's the standard, how do you ever interject yourself into that situation without essentially risking death?
You can't.
You don't.
And that's how they want it. Exactly.
That's
exactly what I'm telling you.
I just want to make my point totally crazy. I actually think at the moment that the Constitution in America at this point is worth shit. I think your 3 branches of government are worth shit. I think that everything at the moment, beliefs and all, are worth shit in America. And the problem why I'm on here right now is because it's affecting the rest of the world as well.
Okay.
And just to go on that point with this instance in particular, it's a case of like, what's the point of having the Second Amendment to legally carry if it essentially means you're signed for death if you interject yourself into a situation just by carrying? At that point, you don't have a right to carry. There's no point to the Second Amendment. It's pointless.
Yeah, it's on paper.
Yeah, I disagree with this. Hold on, John. I could give you even more to dig into. So the Second Amendment, well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The reason why I still think that your argumentation is bullshit is because people across the United States of America are still able to take their firearms, concealed carry. They're still able to defend themselves against criminals. They're still able to go to firearms ranges and practice with firearms. They're able to practice with, small unit tactics if they want to. They can get radios. They can do this. They can do that. There's tons of militias all over the United States, and they are legally permitted to do so. So just because we're not in a shooting civil war right now between militias and the federal government doesn't mean that the Second Amendment isn't serving a ton of other purposes. And the Second Amendment grants me, real quick, the Second Amendment grants me the permission to concealed carry, but then interfere with law enforcement operations, risking death. To say the Second Amendment is moot at that point, I think is silly.
Well, I thought
the fact that you're risking death dealing with constitutional peace officers is the silly part. That's the part you can't admit. They're the aggressive Constitution killing individual rights hating pieces of trash. They're the problem. You're like the guy.
Believe in borders?
You cannot convince you that you're the issue. You're the problem.
Correct, because I think that a state has the right to determine who does and does not live within their state, and they're allowed to have federal law enforcement officers detain people who are not a part of said nation and then deport them. Yeah, I got no fucking problems with that.
Hey, next time a border patrol guns someone down in the head and they step on the gas and they run over your wife and your kid, hey man, it's all part of the deal, man.
I mean, I'm white, so probably not. But
there you go. Throw in a race joke. Throw in a race joke to soften the blow a little bit.
I will.
You're wrong.
I'm Northern European.
I'll pass in a second, but just quickly, with that in mind though. Counter,
shake your heads no at my joke. That way everybody knows you disavow it.
I am a Brit.
I see you, Crispy.
The Constitution too well. But I thought one of the aspects of it was to combat tyranny.
It is.
So you can't selectively take part of the Second Amendment and say, well, it still applies in some aspects, but then say
it does. If Donald Trump became a dictator, I make a lot of jokes, but if Donald Trump became a dictator, where he was denaturalized, no, he's not. And this is, you've been online too much. You've been listening to Destiny too much. No. If he started denaturalizing and liquidating ethno-religious minorities within the United States akin to Hitler in the early 20th century, then I think legality no longer matters. The private ownership of firearms must fulfill its purpose, which is effectively rebelling against a tyrannical regime. So we're not there.
Just one quick thing, and then I'll pass off.
Immigration enforcement is not the same as the Third Reich.
It's just taking it to John as well, which was I think it was kind of insane what you were saying earlier about the tarry rules and should those police officers serve time? Of course not. That's mental. You cannot have a police force. You give them instructions and then say, oh well, they're breaking the law, so they need to do time. No, if the tarry rules as applied have been given down, from the top, then okay, maybe you can prosecute the people who gave those orders, but not the police officers that are carrying them out. Like, that's insane. As long as they're legally justified to do it, you know, and they've been given the right to, then yeah, of course they're going to do that. Why wouldn't they? And you shouldn't make it so. It's not about following. It's not about following orders necessarily. It's about if you're given a set of criteria, like I'm given a set of criteria to run at my work. You know, this is how I've got to do my job. If I then follow that, and then someone comes to me and says, "Oh, well, you're being sacked. Why? Because you've done it this way, and that's not the way we want you to do it." So, well, that's the guidance I was given. If you want to sack anyone, sack the people above me who gave me the fucking guidance. That's not my issue.
You're looking at it exactly. So you're given the guidance, and then as soon as you get to work, they're telling you to do it outside of the guidance. The guidance is the Constitution, and then you get to work, and they're telling you to do things that are not in
you can't have it both. You can't have it both ways, though.
Right?
Like, you were just nodding your head when I said that the Constitution's worth shit. So you can't say, well, the Constitution's worth shit, but then it's also what everyone needs to abide by. Those two.
The reason it's worth shit is because no one's abiding by it and no one's upholding it, and you got guys like him that celebrate its destruction.
At that point, then you can't say, well, they should be in jail because they should be following it. Because if your own government aren't following it and 99% of the people in the country aren't following it, why should you prosecute a handful of people for then saying, well, you aren't using these as your guiding principles? Like, that's just
not a handful. Everyone who's violating it, not just a handful.
So then 99% of the population of the US should be in jail for not following the Constitution.
Yeah, any government parasite, cop, any politician.
I mean, if you bite the bullet on 99% of the population should be in prison, like, okay, I can't disagree.
I'm sorry. Start over, man. I was talking.
I just said if you're going to bite the bullet on 99% of the US population should be in prison because they're not using the Constitution as their guiding principles, then
it's not the population osmosis, it's the government actors. The people of the American citizen absolutely loves the Constitution and Bill of Rights. It's what it is to be an American. That's what it is.
Yeah, but the problem is, like, the police officers are people. Like,
I also think it's bold of you to assume that most Americans like read above a second grade level, like, and that they like know the Constitution and understand it. I think that's
why us smart people are supposed to protect the ones that.
But then there's also business leaders who don't follow the Constitution, you know, as a guiding principle. There's plenty. I assume there's plenty of companies I can imagine that don't follow the Constitution.
Companies don't have to follow the Constitution. They don't have to follow it. That's
it should be their guiding principle, right? Like you just said, that the police officers should gauge their guiding principles by the Constitution, not from their uppers. Well, if that's the case, I mean, they're just people.
Because
they're supposed to know they're supposed to know all the rules from the Constitution, but everyone else in the US, because they're not police officers who get paid what, $30,000 a year, $40,000 a year.
It's their job to know the law and uphold our rights. It's not a private company's job.
Their job's not to know the law.
I'm sorry?
Their job's not to know the whole law. Like, that's not a police officer's job. It's to know the law inside and out. They need to know the bits that they need to know for their job, and that's it. Like,
yeah, arguably that's not even a state attorney's job. Even a state attorney doesn't know all of the law.
And most cops don't even know the bits that you're talking about either.
I'm sure some don't, but I mean, but then you're saying that, like,
it's the majority.
But if they get orders from above, I mean, like,
okay. So what happened in Nuremberg in World War II about following orders? What happened there?
If you're talking about people killing people and like committing grievous crimes that are clearly morally wrong,
if it's whether it's death,
what are we talking about?
What if you just strike somebody?
Sorry to eat up so much of the time.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and move on to Crispy Nation. Welcome as well. Your question or comment, sir, or sirs?
Yeah, Rogue Nation lives across the street from me, so he was backstage and had bad connection. He came over here. We figured it out. Kalimera John, Yanni.
Good morning, good day.
It was ironic that I had a gyro today, and I know you're Greek. I didn't profile you as a Latino, a fellow Latino.
They're both Mediterranean.
That's why I just like your joke. I was shaking my head because I was like, oh, he doesn't even see the irony, and what he was saying before about profiling a black kid with a hoodie. You know how many black kids in Florida summer heat wear hoodies here? Every one of them.
To be fair, when John spoke to this comment, I heard the same thing that Connor heard, that he said, I'm I am Hispanic. I thought he said that too. I don't think anybody was profiling, but
it doesn't matter, dude. Hispanic is from Spain, Italy, Greek. You're all Mediterranean. You all look the fucking same.
Either way, I do have more people hanging backstage waiting to get to this. So, Crispy, if you could get to your question or comment, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I have a few questions. First of all, you could say no if your agency, you're not a trooper with the FHP earlier before 2019, right? Or
I was not with FHP.
Oh, okay. Well, you were a trooper, and you were talking about how you guys have to arrest.
No. I wasn't a trooper. I was a city cop. I was told as a city cop, don't fuck up because FHP will jam you up.
Okay. Oh, so you were here in Florida. Your agency here in Florida. Okay. So you know that FHP, they usually behave like the FBI. They do have to arrest everybody. They have these guidelines. Guiding principles, as Osmosis, our brother from another mother and across the pond, was mentioning, your guiding principles were that, it's suspicious to wear a hoodie if you're like that right there. And assuming that John is Latino and all those biases, they have already poisoned the bunch. The bad apples have poisoned the bunch. People think that they can train this problem out, but it's a hiring problem. There are already people in the command staff who like the cut of your jib if you're gonna help us cover up shit, and you can help us go by different metrics, the ones that you've already deluded yourself with. Counterpoints, you're saying it's right. Let me ask you, you know Bukele, the El Salvador president?
Yep.
Okay, would you figure him to be somebody that's want to give you a bump in a Miami nightclub, or as a presidential dictator who keeps you safe?
Shit. I mean, he's from South America, so probably both. Let's be real.
Right? Let's be real. Okay. So now, do you prefer his government, like what he's doing out there? Is that what you would want to achieve here?
No.
Okay. You see, there are a lot of innocent people thrown in jail, right? And
tortured and sodomized, yeah.
Right. And you peaceful security or peaceful slavery or dangerous freedom? What do you prefer?
Correct. It's a balance.
What do you prefer?
I prefer the exact amount of danger that America has. Actually, no, I'm serious. So for instance, like,
would you?
He's laughing. I'm not. So hold on. So there's no reason to have a Hayabusa except for a Hayabusa is a drag motorcycle, right? There's no reason to have a fucking crotch rocket except for crotch rockets are amazing, right? No reason to have a Harley, no reason to drink, no reason to do this, no reason to do that. Besides, it's fucking awesome, right? Like booze, tobacco, weed, name all that shit, right?
I'm responsible enough to know that I'm not responsible enough to ride a motorcycle, though, so I don't.
Well, right. So the point is that, like, if we wanted to make a padded bubble boy, I forget what that cop movie is with Sylvester Stallone, where like society is all like sanitized and they don't have sex anymore.
Demolition Man.
Yeah, there you go. Demolition Man. So we could have a perfectly safe Demolition Man society tomorrow. But that's not interesting or cool. I like living in the state of Florida because we got fucking dinosaurs and rednecks and methamphetamine and pills and motorcycle gangs and tattoos and strip clubs and people fist fighting and all that kind of bullshit. A lot of people are afraid of the anarchic danger of America, and yet I think it's a cool and vibrant and interesting place to live. But I'm not deluding myself that there aren't like dangers within said system.
Almost done.
Of tolerating freedom comes with a ton of risk, but I think it's cool.
I voted for the first time in '92 Republican. In '96, I voted for Harry Brown and Joe Jorgensen, Libertarian, and Libertarian ever since. I went back to Republican now, but I have not voted. I'm not a blind, loyal fool to this thing.
No, I think Trump's
that was a bad shoot. That was a bad shoot. Do you walk away, empty up 9 more rounds into somebody looking up at the sky? No, it's not a firing range.
Well, I'm sorry, I missed what you said. What you saying?
That happened yesterday. They
Which one?
just walked away and just opening up on the guy. You know, it was a bad shoot. There's no arguing that. And anybody
I think there is arguing that.
I didn't see what I saw, whether they were triggered by that type of weapon that might have like gone off prematurely or whatever. That I saw that's the first thing that I saw. As soon as I saw it the first time, I saw that what you think might have happened. I think there's a small percentage chance that's what happened. I do know that the guy with the pointy hat right next to him had already drawn his and was ready to go, and he's the one who initiated everything. Everybody else reacted to that guy.
Okay,
and it was a bad shoot.
So I think off of good faith,
he has a trigger finger tattooed on his tramp as a tramp stamp. So he fired a gun. Fire his gun from the middle of his back. That's how.
Are you talking about me,
John? To dispute what you were saying before, you said, "Oh, prove me wrong. You can't be Democrat and Republic." This is a democratic republic where the sovereignty is in the individual. No, not sovereign citizens. We're not talking about that. But we live in a democratic republic where if you don't like how it's democratically ruled in this town, move to the next town. And maybe there it's more rural, like where we live, and everybody understands the program here. You know, our neighbors, we get goat cheese from this one lady, we'll get honey from this other guy, and we have our plan figured out. But there are people who live in apartment buildings that they have to deal with that democratic vote, you know?
Sure. I guess what I would boil down to is like I would happily bet $20 that this federal officer is not going to get charged, and the guy who pulled the trigger the first, and it's not because of like some like opaque judge, you know, bullshit where they like cover it up and write it up or whatever. It's going to be because of like citable case law. It's going to be no. It's not even going to be immunity. It's going to be articulating that they were engaging in lawful arrest. They were, you know, trying to detain this guy and get him down on the ground. While they were getting him down on the ground, he didn't surrender. So as a result, they were applying more force. Then he heard another officer scream gun. And so he pulled his firearm, believing that there was an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. He heard a shot go off and believing that it was the subject firing at his fellow police officers. He fired in order to prevent greater loss of death or like imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. And I'm telling you, it's going to work. I'll just bet you $20 right now. It's going to work.
And that's how you lose your freedom, Osmo.
Why did the first officer go hands-on? Why did he shove the lady, start spraying people? And then when this guy was trying to help her off the ground, why did he grab his hoodie from behind and pull him back and try to punish him for his ego bruise?
I mean, dude, I've been in like a dozen scraps. Like, dude, when you had like I said, monkey fucking a football when it was 6 people trying to get one person down onto the ground. I'd like to finish my monkey fucking a football analogy real quick. So when I say monkey fucking a football, that's what I want you to actually picture. I want you to think of like a spider monkey grabbing a football and grabbing it at weird angles and trying to put his dick in it, because that's what 6 cops were trying to do to that one guy.
That's not procedure. That's 47 days of training. Go ahead, bro.
Let's Rogue, did you have a quick question, because there are more people waiting?
Absolutely. I'll lead into it real quick. Counterpoints. What would you say, or would you agree with me that the ID law is the most used law in an officer's career, like day to day? Would you agree with that? My question.
I don't think Florida has an ID law where anybody has to produce their ID.
You already gave me.
Like if somebody's being detained or a traffic stop or whatever, that then they have to identify themselves. And if that's the most common thing that cops do, I can agree to that.
Well, cops anywhere,
any contact,
Georgia, California. Would you?
If you're detained or if you're in a traffic stop, you have to present your ID. Yes.
Well, any interaction, cops asking for ID, right?
Or your social.
Right. Just trying to get your identification, try to figure out who you are, right?
Yes.
Okay. To phase into it, we can probably both agree that ignorance of the law is no excuse for citizens. Is that correct?
Depending on the crime, but yeah.
It's widely known that ignorance of the law is no excuse as a defense to crime for a citizen, correct?
The only reason why I'm giving you a caveat is because there are like crimes that involve intent, which then can be used to argue whether or not that person is guilty of said crime. But like if you're asking me to say yes or no, I'll say 90% yes with that little caveat. Okay.
Okay. Are cops allowed to make reasonable mistakes of law?
Yeah.
Okay, so square this logic for me. A citizen has to know the laws. I put on a costume, I can now make mistakes of the law. Square that logic.
And call yourself law enforcement.
Because law enforcement is attempting to do something addition besides eat, shit, piss, pay bills, work jobs, right? They're trying to effect law enforcement operations, which means in detaining and incarcerating people. And so I think what you're referencing is the good faith doctrine, effectively meaning that if you're able to articulate how you are following your training, your experience, your understanding of the law, et cetera, that is a viable defense should somebody accuse you of improper behavior, right? That's what you're saying. But I would say that citizens also have a similar capacity to defend themselves in a court and say, oh, well, I don't know. Think about something in reference to possession. Like you're saying, like ignorance is not a defense. Ignorance can be a defense. So for instance, like if you find narcotics or whatever on the side of the road, and then you go turn it into a law enforcement officer, and then the law enforcement officer arrests you for possession, you can argue in front of court and say, I wasn't trying to possess drugs. I was trying to turn it into law enforcement. You can
still go to jail.
And that is something that can be dismissed. No. Bullshit. No.
Right, let's pardon me. I'm going to take back my show. Pardon me. We're going to move on because there are more people, and I still have 5 more waiting backstage on the line.
Turn in these 10 keys, officer.
You can beat the rest.
I will pass it over to Steve. Steve, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
Man, there's been so many different tangents and so many directions that this has gone, and so many just blatant lies from the mouthpiece of the state over here. We've got a couple of fundamental problems that nobody's addressed yet. The foremost being the recognition of what modern day 2026 law enforcement is, which is a hyper-partisan, militarized enforcement arm of the state in order to ensure property rights of a very limited amount of the citizenry, and that's fucking it. There's no other function for law enforcement whatsoever in 2026. That's the only directive. And we see this played out specifically every time there's a riot. Now, I don't think that these riots are organic. I don't think that they represent a genuine coalescing of people in order to air a grievance. I think that they're funded. I think that they're controlled, and we can prove this over and over and over and over again. So I guess, fellas, what I'm trying to get at is, why is everybody pretending instead of addressing what's actually happening? What's actually happening with law enforcement currently is you have a bunch of people who are not just trained to ignore the Constitution by their TOs. Hang on, let me finish. You got to talk a lot. You got law enforcement officers who their TOs are telling them, you run this shit. This is your town. These are your streets. We all have to have a little loose interpretation of the law here and there. We can all play fast and loose sometimes. And that's the general philosophy. And if you want to argue with me, you're lying, like you've been lying throughout this entire conversation, Connor. That's not how law enforcement works. I have current friends that are in various aspects of state, local, and federal law enforcement, they tell me all the time what the culture is. But where we're at right now is we have a federal government that is telling federal agents that they can murder indiscriminately. There's no rules of engagement whatsoever. And that the moment that you can just report to your superior officer, who in the case of Minnesota is Greg Bavino, who looks like the final boss of Subaru owners. He looks like the world's angriest lesbian.
Dude, you're just yapping.
Yeah,
Let's
I was going to say,
go.
I do want to say, Steve, where
I
is the
made
question,
several
please?
fucking salient points in terms of rules of engagement,
two of
in
them
terms of
were
the
wrong.
way that the federal government is dictating that law enforcement works. And yes, dude, and if you want to debate the functional role of law enforcement as anything other than a militarized and weaponized arm of the state to enforce property rights in 2026, by all means.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to. Okay, so you saying that you didn't just say that. What you said, it's a militarized enforcement of the state that only enforces the property rights of a certain elite segment.
Primarily.
It's total fucking bullshit.
And you can
know what
provide
patrol
examples
officers
of
are?
that,
Hold up,
of
hold up.
course.
Shut the fuck up. You talk for 5 minutes. I would like
You
the opportunity to talk.
talked for an hour and a half and then 2 hours before
I'm
that.
the invited guest on the show, Steve.
Stop. And he is correct. He is the guest of the show, Steve. You asked or kind of said something, Steve. You have to let him respond if you want to respond. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, patrol, the entire concept behind it is that you patrol a zone, meaning that you hit the same bad roads over and over and over and over and over again. You drive down the same roads over and over and over again. But what you're doing through your mere presence, because we can bear this out with stats, is that when a law enforcement officer is present and people are cognizant of said presence, they're less likely to commit crimes because they have an increased fear of being caught. This is borne out statistically. And so if you have rough neighborhoods, the people who are actually engaged in criminality as a career is actually a shockingly small percentage of the population.
Sure.
Like 97, 99% of the people in any working class community, they actually work up, they wake up, they work, they do their jobs, they pay their bills, they pay their taxes, and they go home and they take care of their family. So as a result, you saying that law enforcement doesn't protect the property rights of working class people is the most absurd, stupid shit that
That's
I've ever
not what I
heard.
said.
And then, yes, you did. And then number two, you saying that I have 3 friends in law enforcement, I could give a fuck.
No, I didn't say that either. So you've lied twice now.
Invite them over.
Twice.
Bring your
lied
state
twice.
police, bring your federal police and your county police friends
Dude,
over.
you had to twist what I said on the first part, and then you blatantly lied about the second part. You have no defense of this.
Exactly what you said, you twat.
No, you didn't. You fucking twisted it because you got tongue in your ears. That's not my fault.
Holy fuck shit. Shut the fuck up. Since you guys can't get along to get through a conversation, I'm going to move on. Laser, if you'd like to ask your question, please. And thank you for your patience, sir. You've been sitting there so quietly.
You're welcome. Hey, John, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you? Thank you. Hey, I just want to ask you some questions about the Fourth Amendment. What standards came out of the Fourth Amendment?
Standards?
Yes, sir.
I might not know what you're talking about there, sir. Can you be
probable
more
cause would be
specific?
one. Probable cause, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The right of the people to be secure in their houses, persons, papers, and effects shall not be violated, but upon probable cause, sworn, affirmed by oath or affirmation, and a sworn by probable cause. I used to know it by heart.
Right, no worries. That's the gist of it, right? So
Yeah.
we have probable cause as one standard, correct? What about reasonableness? Would reasonableness be a standard?
Yeah, a reasonable search and seizure. Yeah.
That's correct. A search or seizure has to be reasonable. So one of the core overarching standards of the Fourth Amendment is reasonableness to a search. Would you agree that a cop opening the door to an apartment would be a search?
Yes.
Yes, it would. So imagine you're a police officer and you're walking in an apartment complex and you hear a woman yelling help inside an apartment. What would you do?
That's exigent circumstances. Of course, I'd try to get in a window or see what's going on.
Right. You don't have probable cause though.
Yeah, there's exigent circumstances there.
Okay, so there's more than one standard than probable cause.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, but you don't believe in reasonable suspicion. You think reasonable suspicion is unconstitutional?
Reasonable articulable suspicion came from the Terry v. Ohio case.
That's not what I asked. I didn't ask where it came from. I asked if you think it's unconstitutional or not.
I believe it's an unconstitutional standard. Yeah, I believe the Fourth Amendment.
Why should I listen to you and not the judges on the Supreme Court?
Oh, yeah, no one has to listen to me, and most people don't have to listen to me. Obviously, it's my opinion. If that's what you mean, why should you have to listen to me specifically?
Yeah.
Well, because I believe that I act in good faith, and I'm for the individual freedom of people, and I'm always in the mind of the individual person, and not the state, and not the government parasites that act in bad faith. And what else can I give you? I can't give you like something solid other than that, honestly.
Sure. And so, I'll just bring it back to Terry v. Ohio, and essentially the judges were cementing the standard of reasonableness when it comes to a search or a seizure, and a detainment based on only reasonable suspicion, not probable cause, is a seizure, right? And so what the judges were saying is that in our eyes, this is reasonable. So you would disagree that it's unreasonable to detain someone based on reasonable suspicion?
So the standard is reasonable suspicion of a crime. So let's flush this out here. So when it passed, the idea, just like qualified immunity, was there's a pile of guys fighting. A cop has to go in there. He don't know who's who, what happened 30 seconds ago. His job right there is to get that peace negotiated. And if he accidentally punched someone or grabbed someone he shouldn't have, he's afforded some leeway. So that's the idea, again, with Terry v. Ohio. They start with good intention. But what happens is...
that's not correct.
What?
No. Terry v. Ohio has nothing to do with qualified immunity. It's based
No. I'm saying both of those start with good intention. And then what happens is they start to get incrementally abused. So now qualified immunity is basically everything. Almost everything that a cop does as civil violation, they get qualified immunity. It's just another hurdle for the law-abiding citizen who hasn't really done anything to jump over. So we were talking about Terry versus Ohio, right?
Yeah. So are you saying in some instances reasonable suspicion is justified and not justified? I thought you didn't agree with the concept.
I don't
altogether.
I don't. But originally, again, it was reasonable, articulable suspicion that someone is or about to commit a crime. And all these decades later, just like qualified immunity, the police have taken that and bastardized it, and they're just like, oh, you're wearing a hoodie and it's 95 degrees. That's not, even to that Terry standard, that's not reasonable suspicion. But now it's turned into any hunch that a low IQ cop has, they think is reasonable articulable suspicion.
That's not true. Hunch is lower than reasonable.
It's demonstrably true in multiple court cases.
Steve, shut the fuck up, please. We are in a certain format right now where it's just one person at a time. You notice everybody else.
I'm trying.
Just mute. You talk to yourself for a little bit. Thank you. Laser, if you wanted to finish up.
So I would agree. So having one specific fact isn't grounds to detain someone on reasonable suspicion, right? And so, I'll bring it back to Benjamin, how he's bringing up that street cop training. So I know a little bit about those guys, and what they do, they don't teach to arrest somebody based off one fact, right? Reasonable suspicion it's a web of facts that are layered together to justify detainment. They're not used singularly, and you can't arrest on them, right?
The more complex you make it, the more easily it's abused. That's why.
It's very simple. I would argue. I would agree that the training is an issue, right? Training's an issue, right? So cops do violate people's rights. It does happen, right? Do you know what percentage that is? Like, what percentage of interactions are done unlawfully? Can you give me a number?
Me?
Yes, sir. Anybody?
I've made 3,400 videos as one creator on YouTube of just constant, repetitive, nonstop, coast to coast cops violating people's rights. And
you said 3,000?
3,400 videos I've made.
You know how many law enforcement interactions there are a year?
And that's just one guy. Yeah, but that's just me, one guy, procuring them off the internet.
Okay.
There's enough content of cops violating people's rights just on the internet.
Well, that's your interpretation, right? We don't know what they've been charged with. We haven't read the reports. I mean, that's a little.
I'm talking about blatant, in your face, undeniable. It happened. Boom, there it is. The cop punched her in the face. There's no denying it.
You mean
Things
like Renee
that.
Good?
Huh?
Like Renee Good?
How many, I do always have the question, if you don't mind me interrupting, Laser, I do always have the question of how many good cops doing the right thing are out there that aren't videotaped, recorded, or thrown around on screen, left, right, and center, versus how many bad ones do we have? Because it seems to be only the bad cops are getting recorded, right? But we
100%.
never really show the hundreds of thousands of cops on a daily basis out there that are
That's crap.
I'll just go ahead.
Hold on. That was only an invitation to Laser, John, and Counterpoints.
No, absolutely. And I'll just put it out there. Hey, I'm a cop. If you guys want to throw some abuse my way, go ahead. But man, my job it's a lot of that. It's a lot of helping people out that it goes unnoticed. Like, you don't know how many calls where it's like helping an old lady or someone that's got a mental health deal going on, or a homeless guy you're just, giving a ride to. Like, none of those good deeds get
How many cops have you arrested?
What's that?
How many cops have you arrested in your career?
I have no idea, because they don't tell me if they're a cop or not.
What?
Does he have to be in uniform?
Can I please interrupt? Because my last video was literally a cop.
No, you cannot. No, you cannot.
Cop helping an old lady.
What part of no, you cannot did you not hear, Crispy?
Connor, have you
Laser, are you done with your question, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Alex, you're the final one, and then we will move into the gauntlet where you can all turn your fucking mics on and interrupt each other, and then I'll just knock you out with a big fuck you. Alex, your question, please.
That's what I'm out.
So first things first, how about them Seahawks, baby? On the way to the Super Bowl. That's right. I got to. So I got to say it. So, okay. So getting on to the serious topic. Okay. So Connor, being former law enforcement, my good buddy, okay, do you believe it's okay for ICE to say they have absolute immunity? And do you think like things like qualified immunity should actually retain, or should they actually go away?
Well, hold up. Qualified immunity typically protects them from civil suit unless you can like demonstrate a clear departure from policy, law, expectations, et cetera, et cetera. And then absolute immunity, I'm assuming, is a presumption of like criminal immunity as well. I don't even know if they have that.
Judges and prosecutors usually have
that. Right.
So
I don't. And if they claimed it, I think they would be incorrect, because they would, they would still be liable to get charged if they were provably guilty of crimes.
No, well, the problem is though, is that like people like ICE have actually been given complete absolute immunity. That's why the fuck they've been acting like this, the way they've been doing. That's why they feel justified in committing fucking murder like they actually did. And like, and here's the thing, there's no other way to look at it. It was fucking murder that took place. But the reason why they were able to get away, the one that took place in Minneapolis.
Okay, let's talk about that in a second.
Yeah. Do you not think that's murder?
No.
I don't see the big difference between the ICE agents and
regular. No, stop. Why don't you think that's murder, Connor?
Because, okay, it's homicide. It's killing someone. Murder is like illegal homicide, right? I think that this is going to be ruled legal.
Why?
Because of something called the good faith doctrine, okay? So what happens is, I'll describe it mechanically. There's a 6-person scrum. Okay, they're fighting over the gun. The guy's wearing sunglasses, but everybody's saying, oh, no. The guy who shot definitely saw the gun and definitely saw the disarm. As somebody who's been in a 6-person scrum with adrenaline out the ass, blood pressure out the ass, basically, I said monkeys fight trying to fuck a football or whatever. Nobody knows what the fuck is going on. Okay, so presuming that he didn't see the gun, or that a reasonable officer wouldn't see the gun or whatever, then effectively the cop disarming and then maybe having a negligent discharge and screaming gun under good faith, if his perspective was the other officers are in imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, I can take action. And so under good faith, he's going to be shielded from criminal prosecution on this.
That's so fucking bad, dude. Do you have any idea how?
Why? Do you think you should go to jail if you accidentally kill someone, but you're doing the right thing?
Yes, he fucking should.
So hold on. You're in Iraq.
Yes.
And you get notified that there's a bunch of fucking VBIEDs.
No, you're on the city streets of the United States.
No, God damn it,
Shut the fuck
Steve.
up,
I'm
Steve.
putting you backstage until we're fucking there. Hang
Okay.
tight. Go ahead.
Then
Connor.
you have a vehicle fucking charge your outpost or whatever. And based off of your perception of the danger or whatever, you don't have the time to cycle through your entire ROE, okay? You don't have time to do the laser dazzler. You don't have time to do the pen flare. You don't have time to do the warning shots. You, in good faith, think that this is a VBIED charging your outpost, okay? So you shoot the driver, all right? But you thought it was a VBIED based off of the totality of circumstances. Well, hey, it turns out it was actually a civilian who had an emergency, and they were charging your fucking outpost because they thought that if they got to you quicker, then you would be able to take them for emergency medicine. By the way, I'm not bringing this up as like a hypothetical. This happened during the War on Terror. So what you're saying is that the person who in good faith believed that they were being attacked by a VBIED, they should be incarcerated for life and treated the same as if they committed an intentional murder? I don't even think you believe that.
So I'm going to respond to this, okay? Connor, first things first, having been in this situation before, I can honestly tell you that there have been multiple situations where somebody might have not been paying attention. But the thing is, we have things when it comes to snap TCPs. We have signs that you put in place that says, please slow down in the event of emergency. But that's not what happened here. This guy was literally attacked. And the thing is, ICE shoved a woman. And this guy, Alex Preddy, literally went over to make sure they're okay. And guess what the fuck they did? They fucking maced his ass, beat him to a fucking pulp. They disarmed him while kicking the fucking shit out of him. And then they all fucking executed him. And you're telling me that's, oh, well, you know, he possibly could have found out. Oh, well, he could have had his gun. No, the fact of the matter is, these guys are incompetent. How is it that you can have a bouncer in a bar that can manage to tackle one person that's drunk off their ass, but yet 8 fucking ICE agents can't handle one person that has the same body frame as me? Dude, I'm 190 pounds, 6 foot tall. It doesn't take 8 people to kick the shit out of me. I'm sorry.
Get off on it, bro.
You're making arguments that were not made. Law enforcement officers have notoriously bad grappling skills. That's a point that's never been made. As a matter of fact, if you were to come at me with like what the solutions to this are, I would say like increasing competence in reference to like grappling would 100% be necessary, because effectively, like, I don't know if you saw this, but it's definitely a part of the video. So there was a guy who I think pepper sprayed him, and he either had his pistol out, which would have been obnoxious, or he had his pepper spray out. Is that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Beautiful. Is that Gracie? Beautiful. So
yeah, that's a curriculum for our department.
Excellent. So you see the guy basically like taking a blunt object and trying to punch Peretti in the side of the head or whatever, getting compliance. I have never seen in thousands of hours of law enforcement footage and also being in the real world, I have never seen a punch or a strike get compliance ever. Okay. Because a punch or a strike, it's like a pain thing. Like you're just putting somebody in pain temporarily, but you're not actually controlling them. Whereas something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or something like Jiu-Jitsu, you're effectively using body mechanics to put somebody into a restraint in order to get them where they need to go, oftentimes less injured than if you were striking them. But the weird thing about this argument is that liberals and progressives, because they see a bad shoot, they see incompetent cops, they see them, basically, I guess, fucking up ROE or whatever. Oftentimes the solution is like, let's cut funding. Let's cut law enforcement. Let's reduce these things. And I think that's going to increase the homicides, not decrease them.
That's such bullshit, dude. Honestly, that is such bullshit. Because it just goes to show that, like, let's just kill this fucking guy and not do anything fucking about it, honestly. That is such a cop-out, dude. Seriously. If you're going to tell me that, like, if we just don't work on our grappling skills, but this has been a problem for years. We've seen people like Eric Gardner, a guy that was like selling cigarettes, and they strangled him and he ended up dying. You see, that's the law. But the thing is, he
probably died from positional asphyxia.
But the thing is, like, how is it that like all these cops can't seem to handle one fucking person, but yet for some reason we're expected just like them to just kill people and not do anything to change it? Essentially, that's what I don't understand.
There's two.
They haven't changed it though, dude. Dude, they haven't changed it. It's been the same for years.
Used for everything a cop does, dude. That's what cops do.
Okay. No, see, this is where I think you guys also just don't listen to words. You just get upset. Okay. There's something called.
He sold the loose cigarette and he lost it.
There's something called. I would love to surprise you, John, if you'd be willing to listen. There's something called officer cause jeopardy.
I already know about
this. Something that's being. I didn't. Okay, then I'm explaining it to the audience, John. Good for you.
Oh boy.
So in Filax versus Barnes, which is a case that has been kicked down to a lower court, a cop was stopping a vehicle that had like unpaid tolls, and it was the boyfriend driving the girlfriend's car. Well, what ended up happening was the car took off and the cop jumped onto the vehicle, and then he used the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to justify killing the driver. Okay.
Yeah, kind of like the Renee.
I think I'm not done yet. Thank you. I appreciate you though. I love you. I think that you could argue that the Renee Good shooting as it stands is going to be ruled justified. But if we rewrote policy and rewrote the law to calculate officer cause jeopardy, you could hold that officer accountable once you have that case law established. What I mean by that is that he allegedly had already been dragged by another vehicle and received stitches. Okay. He walked in front of a running motor vehicle of somebody that he might potentially detain, not once, but twice. He walked in front of the vehicle, walked around the vehicle, walked back in front of the vehicle, then used the vehicle coming at him in order to shoot the driver, which is in violation of policy. Now, dollars to donuts, if you ask me if this guy's going to get charged or incarcerated, I'm putting it at less than 1% he's going to be charged and incarcerated.
Not even close.
But that does not mean that we shouldn't write new case law based off of officer cause jeopardy, where if an officer knowingly or recklessly forces a use of force scenario to occur that otherwise would not have occurred, and as a result, death happens, if they're reckless or malicious, I think number one, you could probably open up lawsuits and you might even be able to have administrative sanctions.
The problem
it should be called the Renee Good law.
Well, the issue is that Border Patrol actually did an investigation on their own agents, where Border Patrol agents legitimately, purposefully walked in front of cars, put themselves in situations they didn't need to be in, to purposely, in the event that people drive away, to actually engage when they didn't need to put themselves in this situation. Jonathan Ross was former Border Patrol. He put themselves in this situation simply because he got all up in his feelings. He was told, go get some lunch, big boy. And the thing is, I actually did an hour-long video about this. He was not in any danger. He engaged when he did not need to. Driving away from a traffic stop does not constitute deadly force. And again, you're talking to somebody that's also been in this situation before. We have never, ever had to engage if the situation did not dictate it. Like, why is it that the rules of engagement are more strict in the combat zone than they are here in the United States? I don't understand it.
And I hate
they
that
definitely
talking
are.
Point. I hate that talking point
Debunk
with
it.
every fiber of my fucking being. At the bottom of every single ROE was, you can take action if you believe there's imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. And as a matter of fact, we argued about this for a decade, because basically what happened was 2003, 2004, during the Iraq war invasion, that's where these scenarios were happening, where civilians were getting blasted because people misunderstood the situation. By 7, 8, where I was at, that's where we had the pen flares. That's where we had the laser dazzlers. That's where we had the smoke launchers. That's where we had the rules about shooting the engine block first and all that kind of shit. And so the security forces troops were complaining that, like, if somebody's charging my convoy, I'm not going to be able to go through this entire EOF. And effectively what ended up happening was the people who were running the briefings, because I was in the fucking briefings, were saying, well, if you can articulate imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, then you can take action.
I was there in 03 and 04 and 05 and 06.
Same rules as current modern day cops.
No. I was there in 03 and 04, 05 and 06. I'm sorry.
Stand by, Alex, for me for just a second. Here's what I'm going to do.
Later in the week, we can.
I'm happy to set the both of you up. I know Alex is only available on the weekends. Connor, if you want to do that, all I need is a prompt from either of you, and we can set it up. John, I believe you wanted to leave before we went into full open panel mode. Did you want to say anything to the audience, to the crowd, to Connor, or just tell everybody to fuck off and go, whatever you'd like to do. So
Man, nice to meet you. Thank you. I'm sorry you don't know what the hell's going on in this world and you live in fantasy world. But if they ever took you down to Gitmo and just played your voice like in a different language, they would just to stop hearing your voice. They would to give up all their national secrets. Raging Tomato, thank you so much. Everyone else who came in, thank you so much. I hate that you're against the people and pro government and pro police. It's literally us, the people, versus them. Us is more important. Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Thank you, John. And thank you to John's audience. I believe you are all watching over on his end. Oh, let me go ahead and get him out of there. If you are watching over on John's side, I'm going to go ahead and remove his destination just for safety purposes because we are going into crazy mode. Connor, are you hanging around, sir?
It is 10:50. I'm definitely gonna have a hard out at midnight. If we lull and nobody's talking to me and they don't even care about my opinions anymore, then I might sneak out. But if people are fighting me, then I'll be happy to fight.
Fair enough. If you are watching over on John Felix, and please come over to, we're going to be shifting over to the Gauntlet debate. That's at the Gauntlet debate. Start making your way over there. Otherwise, I'm going to have to remove his just for safety purposes in case anything happens. I don't want to be trying to call him in the middle of midnight to say there's a giant peen on his screen. All right. So John Felix, you are out of here. And then if you're watching on, what is this other destination? If you're watching over on Resisting Without Violence, I believe that is John Felix's other destination. I'm removing that as well. Again, make your way over to at the Gauntlet debate. There we go. All right, that one's out. If you are on panel, you are more than welcome to join in dual streaming. The button is in the top right corner. We believe sharing is caring. If you're watching over on the Raging Tomato side on YouTube, I'm shutting that one down now. You can catch the raid over, or I have dropped the link in the chat if you want to direct yourself on your own like a big boy. Okay.